I'd like to welcome everybody to this regular scheduled Oscoda Township Board meeting for March 27th. If we could begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cummings?
Here.
Ms. McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Spencer? Mr. Sutton here? Mr. Wusterbark?
Present.
Mr. Palmer?
Here. That leads us up to our first public comment. This public comment is you need to fill out a request sheet. This is for anything regarding on the agenda this evening. And I would remind everyone that our board policy is we don't answer questions during these times. So do we have any?
We went over agenda additions.
I did skip over that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Do we have any agenda additions?
I handed out some payments to be under the consent agenda for the CWSRF and C2R2.
Okay, that's,
Yep.
please,
On
okay.
the
All
floor
right.
table when I gave Tammy a copy yesterday.
Okay. That's under the consent agenda. That's not an addition. Okay, public comment. Do we have?
We have one, and that's Kathy Wusterbarth.
Okay, if you would state your name and come up to the podium, please.
Hello.
Hello. You see them all the time.
Kathy Wusterbark. I actually wanted to bring up the PFAS resolution that I've been asking the board for quite a bit now. I think it's maybe a month and a half. I do want to remind the board that the state of Michigan has requested these interim remedial actions take place for the ones that I've requested support for, and also the Iosco County Commissioners also has created a resolution of support for these. So if that could get on the agenda soon, I know that you have a PFAS update, so I would really like to see that in the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more?
No.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. The approval of minutes for the meetings March 13th and special meeting on March 15th. Any comments on those? Discussion, corrections? Hearing none, we'll move on to the finance payment of bills. For March 21st, $46,901.74. March 28th, $12,007.36. And then the utility billing refund checks report and the C2R2 checking report and the tax account checking report. Any questions or comments on these? Hearing none?
I think the one for the tax checking account actually isn't for the tax account. Let me see if I can find it here.
I'm sorry, Jamie, I can't hear what you're saying.
That's okay, let me find the page real quick.
Sure.
Thank you. So page 14, I believe it is.
Page 14 of the packet.
Yep.
Thank you.
That's actually not the tax account. That's actually the common checking account. It's trailer tax that we have people that own the trailers, they have to pay a tax on it through the state of Michigan to us every quarter, so much for each trailer, it's $3, and that gets processed through our common checking account. So just so you know, it wasn't the tax account, it goes into the common checking account, and then I have to disperse money to the county and then to the state also.
Interesting.
Okay, and to ourselves.
So that's not through the tax?
No, correct, it's through our common checking. Yep, you can see
Okay.
right underneath there, it says common checking HCB.
Ah, yes.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the payment of bills? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Also, I'm sorry, the ones that are on the board, table 2, need to
Oh.
be approved.
Okay.
I was gonna say, it's gotta
Thank
be
you.
included too.
On the first sheet, you'll notice that I handwritten a couple of the amounts, kind of lumped 2 of the invoices together. So I just wanted to make sure for clarity's sake that you know that there's 2 invoices that were paid on this. When it prints the check, it does list out both invoice numbers and the different amounts for the vendor, so they have that when they receive the check in the mail. These are all C2R2 that were processed either Friday or today, so I wasn't able to make it into the packet for the cutoff for Thursday. And these are all checks that were approved by the board previously at meetings. They're just the actual checks that are written out.
Okay. And the one is from the CWSRF,
Yep,
and the rest are the C2R2.
correct. There's, yep, 2 for the CWS, oh no, I got 2 copies of it, never mind. Yeah, 1 for CWSRF and the rest are C2R2.
Any questions on that?
No.
Are we keeping up with the C2R2? Is that money rolling in a little better now than when we
Yes,
first started?
yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as is.
Support?
Support, Spencer.
We have a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Spencer. Approve the consent agenda. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wurschbarth? Yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion's passed. Next, we have our engineering report. Mr. Freeman is here. Do you want to go ahead with your report?
Good evening.
Good evening.
March 2023 report. Water main projects basically are the same as they have been for the last couple of months. Really no progress on those. The Phase 5 Elmers is going to be out within the next week to finish up their bore under Interlake, clean up around that, and then also start putting in the main along Ridge Road. As far as services go, again, we're at a standstill on services until the parts come in, and it's been presented at the last couple of meetings. The latest we've gotten from Ferguson is end of April, 1st of May on the first 150 meter pits and meters coming in. So keeping progress, or keeping up to date on progress on that, and we are starting to get calls from residents, so that we will, as soon as we have a definite schedule on that, we will start getting notices out to them as far as scheduling their hookups. The sanitary sewer system project, the CWSRF, working diligently with the contractor and F&V and the individual components of the project, completing the punch list and miscellaneous items that keep cropping up. We should have, I was hoping for today, an answer, at least as far as cost on the odor control. Looks like I'll be getting that tomorrow. And then I'll be talking to the regional Eagle office as far as whether that can be included in this project or not, based on the budget and such, and I'll have a report on that at the next meeting. And then, again, reviewing the overall remaining budget with RCL, and we'll be working on closing that project out financially, probably in the May-June timeframe. The 2024 CWSRF DWRF project plans, that is later in the agenda for the award for the professional services on that. and we'll be jumping into working on coordination with the Township and F&B operations to put together the priority projects for those coming up. Phase 3 trail, contractor is making pretty good progress now that the weather is kind of settling down a little bit. I believe if he hasn't completed all the stump removals, he's very close to finishing that process up. He had asked for staking for earth excavation, and his plan is to get that wrapped up by the April 30th deadline. So he's confirming that he's on schedule, and so far we're seeing more and more progress in the field. So, and then after April 30th, then it will actually start building the new trail up from its base.
Rick, is it April 30th or April 15th?
Well, April 30th is the absolute deadline. That's the mitigation date for the EMR.
Right.
April 15th is an interim date for making sure that all the stump removals and all that is complete, and the tree removals were done for the potential of the bat, the Indiana bat nesting. So he's got that all done, so he's met essentially the April 15th date.
Okay.
And now it's just the April 30th date for the EMR.
Okay, thank you.
Continuing to coordinate efforts with F&B operations on several issues. Had another meeting with Catherine today on several items. Some miscellaneous pump station repairs, not related to the CWSRF project. PFAS and the treatment system as far as coming up for again, in preparation of the 2024 CWSRF DWRF project plan, starting to work on prioritization of those projects. Coordinating with Wigan Ticknell Associates, the architects, on the facilities improvements. Still working with them on getting a date set for them to come up for a progress meeting with Tammy, and then kind of laying out the rest of the schedule for the early summer as far as coming to the Planning Commission and the board when that process is ready to present.
That, Rick, that's something that I wanted to mention because it's come up at our Planning Commission meetings that, this board charged the Planning Commission to come up with a recommendation for what we need and everything, and we met early on to go over some of the things. It's been over a year now, and I will tell you the Planning Commission is a little restless and feeling a little, left behind, and it makes it look like the Planning Commission isn't doing what they were charged to do, but we haven't received any information. And it seems to me over a year now should have been plenty of time for WTA to put that information together as to, the building assessment and what we need. And so I'm hoping that time frame is going to be soon rather than later.
A significant portion of the delay was getting all the existing information on the existing facilities. They really didn't receive all of that until January. Combination of the utility information, the building plans. Building plans got kind of lost between, they were in storage out at Ani and coming into the township offices. They do now have everything, and I would anticipate and hopefully within the next couple of weeks we'll have a informal progress meeting with them and then set up a schedule for early summer as far as doing presentations.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Other township engineering activities, we're still waiting, I'm guessing, on the Air Force for mission. Oh, Lisa, no, okay, the township attorney. And then we're also got tonight, later on the agenda, some aerial survey and mapping proposals for Old Orchard Park. Met with them a couple of weeks ago on some upcoming CIP projects over the next couple of years. Specific funding opportunities. One that's out there that I just can't get anybody to respond on is the Senator Peters funding that we were supposedly going to receive from last year. In the fall, we were, I think, told informally that it had passed budget. but we have not heard anything more on it, and it's kind of important because he has another request for appropriations out there right now. So we're trying to get somebody from his office to respond, and we've had no successful attempt at this time. So if there's anybody that has an into his office to find out, because supposedly we got $3 million in the budget that was passed back in October.
And what was this going to be directed for?
That was a miscellaneous of, we were very open-ended on our requests. It was infrastructure, both water and sewer. It was parks. It was quality of life issues, parks related and all that. So it's pretty much, depending on how if it is funded and how they send it back with the language, it should be pretty open-ended for us to choose our priorities as far as how to use that money.
So everybody call their senator. Request our money. All right. Thank you.
We're working through several other ones. Again, later in the meeting tonight is the resolution for the MDNR passport grant for Warrior Pavilion and the restrooms out, or the bathhouse restrooms out at Ken Ratliff Park. We did receive in the grant application packet for broadband. The applications are due June 20th. We're working through that now to see what, components can be applied for, how to go through the application process. Early on, we had heard, that it was, the state had to make a decision on how they were going to distribute it down to the counties, and then the counties were going to come up with a plan how to distribute it further down the road. So that's what we're looking at now as far as what they've got set up. The range in funding is $100,000 to $5 million. So that kind of tells me that there's a wide range of opportunities and complications in that application. We're looking for a debrief on the Spark grant that we submitted back in December for the remaining 2 opportunities that are supposedly out there this year. We're supposed to be getting some direction on that debrief later this month, hopefully yet this week, obviously. And then also the schedule for the next round of funding there. And Holiday Inn Express, I was able to get with the site development engineer and express the 2 options for water connection that we've investigated from the township side. And he's taken that back to the developer, and we're waiting to hear what their proposed plan is moving forward. And that's about it with my report. Any other questions?
I have a couple.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
You might have already answered this at a previous meeting, but a couple people have asked me this. The meter pits are with the C2, R2, or any of the loan projects, are they covered by those funds? They are?
Yes, they're completely
Okay.
covered within those, the C2, R2 will completely reimburse the township for those expenses.
Okay. The other one is I've had several people actually ask me about the clear cutting that's going on by Whirlpool. Is that in conjunction with the trail?
Yes.
And
I believe so.
And
Now,
is it-
the Forestry Service is out there also doing some lumbering, so it might be kind of simultaneous, but I think what you've seen so far would be relative to the trail.
Okay, and is there a reason why they're clearing that much space out there for the trail? It's going to be a parking area or something?
The Whirlpool area is an interpretive area, so there is a common area there, so that could be why that's a little bit larger than the normal corridor for the trail.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Any other questions? Rick? Thank you, Rick. Next, our superintendent's report.
Okay. Your packet contains 2 letters to Kratos Gas from the township attorney on behalf of the township. Legal action has not moved forward due to what the township thought was a reimbursement from DTE. I am asking the board for permission to have the township attorney pursue legal action against Kratos Gas to try and recover the funds totaling $45,573.86.
Discussion, questions? I know our attorney had sent several letters to Kratos previously, So I think probably the legal action can start now since she has contacted them
Right,
earlier.
right,
So the next step would obviously be legal action.
agreed.
Do I have a motion? Well, I'll make a motion to approve the superintendent to work with the township attorney to begin litigation against Kratos Gas.
Support Sutton.
We have a motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wurschenberg?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes,
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion's passed.
Your packet contains a proposal from Rowe Engineering for aerial survey and mapping of Old Orchard Park. This service will provide base maps for several upcoming projects in the park's capital improvement plan. I would ask that the board approve the mapping proposal from Rowe Engineering in the amount of $6,900 to be paid from Fund 218-000-984.000, Old Orchard Park Capital Improvement Fund.
We don't have any maps of Old Orchard Park?
It's more aerial from above, so they can see, they have bathhouse projects coming up and a fishing pier that needs to be replaced.
Al has some very nice hand sketches.
Need a little something more detailed?
This will basically provide the base for, as Tammy said, they've got a bathroom project coming up, they've got a new dump station project coming up, and also we're looking at some funding for asphalt paving of the roads out there, which would give us a better definition as far as what the area looks like.
the distance, got it.
How long are these maps usually good for? So if we get it done now, is it going to be good for 50 years, 100 years, 10 years?
Correct, because what we'll do is with these maps is as we do projects, we will do an as-built right in that map, so then Al and future Parks and Rec individuals out there can use those moving forward.
So this will be something that's going to be beneficial for not just this project, but
No,
for
several
many years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
I'd make a motion to approve the $6,900 to be paid from Fund 218-000-984.000 to provide funding for Rowe Engineering to give us an aerial survey and mapping of Old Orchard Park.
Support Cummings.
We have a motion from Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Wurschenberg?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes,
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion passed. Next is the Phase 5 water project.
Okay. Your packet contains a proposal from Rowe Engineering for additional services in the Phase 6 water main project. This proposal will provide for the creation of additional right-of-way documents, surveys, and mapping. I would ask that the board approve the additional scope of work proposal in the amount of $12,600 to be paid through C2R2 funds after reimbursement has been requested and deposited into the township's account.
Questions? Comments?
Sounds pretty straightforward to me.
yep,
Do I have a motion?
I would move to approve $12,600 for additional scope of work proposal from Rowe Engineering to be paid from C2R2 grant funding after reimbursement has been requested and deposited into the township's checking account.
in the amount,
I'm sorry?
in the amount.
In the amount of $12,600.
Repeat that?
$12,600.
Oh, thank you. Support.
What did I say?
No, I thought I had it wrong.
Oh.
Never mind. Wrong item.
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wurschenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes,
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion passed. Next up is the Lakewood Shores.
Okay, as in the previous Old Orchard park mapping proposal. Your packet contains a proposal from Rowe Engineering for, again, aerial survey and mapping for the Lakewood Shores area. This service would help staff in the development of future capital improvement projects for future infrastructure improvements. This proposal was budgeted for in the 2023 budget process for the amount of $10,840 and requires board approval.
I must have missed that meeting when we were talking about doing this. Why are we going to fund, is it a grant that we're not going to have to pay back? Or why are we looking into developing the infrastructure for Lakewood Shores?
This is primarily for running the sanitary sewer out Cedar Lake from where it ends right now. It ends at just in the vicinity of the Kmart, behind the Kmart building. And for the development in Lakewood Shores, there has to be a sewer for them to connect to. And this is taking the sewer out and then servicing existing township residents on either side of, existing residents on either side of Cedar Lake now. And this will also be part of the CWSRF, the 2024 project plan, to get funded through that.
So that will help, like a few years ago when they had the high water out there on Cedar Lake Road and a lot of people were having issues with their septic tanks and stuff? Okay.
And just to clarify, you did say that the $10,840 would be reimbursed?
Yeah, yes, like I said, that's going to be part of that 24-20 CWSRF project plan running out there. And then also that we're going to be looking at other grants, CBDG grants and all of that stuff. So yes, this would be reimbursable through any of those grant programs that we're going after.
Are we getting a bundling discount since we're doing so many of these right now?
We're getting frequent attention. How about that?
Rick, I know you're saying that we're going to get reimbursed, but the CWSRF, isn't that basically a loan program? So we really aren't going to get reimbursed. We're going to have to pay that back.
But this program that is out there for this one, this 2024, has a significantly higher number of potential principal forgiveness. So the current one that we're finishing up is, I think the township will getting 1.6 million in principal forgiveness on that. This has the potential of possibly being 100%.
Okay.
No guarantees, but there is going to be a principal forgiveness portion to this one also.
And for tonight's request, what we're looking for is just simply to take the money out of the budget from a specific fund already named. So we're not trying to make this contingent on returning the money back because we haven't applied for it yet.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
Is part of the hope on this to help with development on so many of these properties that are owned by the land bank out there?
Yeah, it'll improve the opportunity instead of, similar to what Jamie just said, that they do have high water table out there and issues with septic fields. So the developers and the land bank can look at a low pressure sanitary system inside the development, and then the township will have a sewer out on Cedar Lake Road that could dump into.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
So some of the other motions we're saying it's very specific that we're going to, these are going to be paid through the C2R2 funds or whatever grant that they're coming from. In this specific case, we're not asking, it's how are we going to keep track of this to show that yes or no, we didn't get it paid back later on down the road. If we're going to pay it up front and it's coming out of the township funds, then, how are we going, how is this going to come back around so that we can see, oh yes, we did get that reimbursed?
It'll be tracked under a project name of Lakewood Shores, Cedar Lake Road Sanitary Sewer, and then that will be built into the project plan that we're going to be putting together for the 2024, the first round, the 2024 CWRF, and we can reference back to that, and what was tracked underneath that then can be submitted for reimbursement.
Okay, thank you.
I think Tammy had something to add.
I was just going to say that in the PO system, we can add it to the user field as well.
Okay.
So that's, you just type in, like I would label that 2024 CWSRF. So I could search by user field and it'll come up anything we paid for that. So,
Cool, okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Can I get a motion?
Yeah, I move that we accept the proposal from Rowe Engineering in the amount of $10,840 for Lakewood Shores mapping to be paid from Fund 236-266-801.000.
Support, Worcester Barth?
We have a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Worcesterbarth. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is the railroad removal.
right. Your packet contains an email from Mr. Bruce Boland to myself and the township engineer regarding the removal of the Perimeter Road and Georgia Street Railroad crossings. Per the email, MDOT would be receptive to funding the removal of these crossings as they haven't seen a train in over 30 years and have fallen in disrepair. I would ask that the Township Board give the Superintendent permission to move forward with MDOT removing the railroad crossing at Perimeter and Georgia Street.
Does the railroad own that property still?
No, that's a township-owned spur.
Spot. I recall some years ago, I can't remember the individual I spoke to at the railroad, but they were trying very hard to get interest from the companies on the old base to use railroad for transportation of freight. And there wasn't any interest from either, based on either the way the companies were already organized or the way they were already shipping or the cost of railroad. I couldn't speak to that at this point, but I know there was an interest in trying to revitalize that because unfortunately, as I remember the gentleman telling me then, that the cost of repair was less than the cost of reinstallation. And so this particular point we're at right now, this juncture, represents pretty much a point of no return. That once we take it out, it's not likely going to come back. So just a comment. I do think we're unfortunately at that impasse where I think we have to take it out, or we can, but I think I'm just telling you what I remember from some years ago on the board.
Didn't we just write a letter to the railroad as well, asking them to give it the green light for a bunch of railroad upgrades?
That was the main line, not this. Not-
Right, well, I'm saying, but if they're, I mean, I'm just trying to say, well, if they're talking about upgrading the main line and doing all this other stuff, you know, at the very second that they finish tearing that out, somebody's gonna stand up and say, oh, I could use the railroad out here on the old base.
I think Tammy's got something to share.
I do. So you're aware, the airport has removed everything after the township-owned spur. There is no longer any railroad tracks into the former base. So ours it ends right at the water tower.
And is this going to take out all of the remaining track or just the street crossings?
I believe it's the remaining track.
But it says street crossings.
Right, that's what I was
Oh, it's just
asking,
the
because I mean,
crossings.
we're starting with street crossings, but there's no reason to leave a bunch of old railroad ties out there.
Yeah, Rick said it was just the
Yeah,
crossing.
it's
Yeah.
just the street crossings.
Yeah.
That's what MDOT is willing to participate in and
Right.
fund at no cost to the township. The right-of-way and all of that still will remain there as township-owned property. So if at some point in the future, there is a need, all that track would have to be replaced anyway, as Mr. Cummings was just saying, because it's out of date, it's not in spec anymore. But the right-of-way would remain, and then also the fact that it crossed Perimeter in Georgia previously, MDOT would only require a safety permit to reinstall it. They wouldn't have to go through the full-blown railroad crossing process, which is a very long and drawn-out issue. So really what's happening here is just the rails are coming out of the pavement.
Yep.
The roads will be repaired, and we'll move on to the future.
Any other discussion? Do I have a motion?
I move that the board approve giving the superintendent permission to move forward with MDOT removing the railroad crossing at Perimeter and Georgia Street.
Support, Spencer.
We have a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is the large meter replacement.
Okay, your packet contains a price quote from Ferguson Waterworks for the purchase of 1.5-inch and larger meters for replacement. Originally, these meters were scheduled for replacement in 2022, but were deferred to 2023. These meters were budgeted for in 2023 for the amount of $42,000. As you can see by the quote in your packet, the price for these meters has now increased to $54,522.08. If the board approves only the budgeted amount, F&V recommends purchasing all of the 2-inch and larger meters and deferring the 1.5-inch meters. The larger the water meter, the higher the potential for significant discrepancy between actual usage and metered volume, so purchasing the larger meters would be more likely to positively impact water accountability.
Comments? Questions?
Yeah, so I'm curious to know regarding what we've probably only budgeted the 42,000, right? It says here. So do you have recommendations as to where the other $12,522.08 will come from, or no?
We do have money in contingency, but that we budgeted 20,000 in contingency for water, so it would have to come from there.
So 20,000 for contingency for water, so we have one separate, specific to water, so that would be helpful. It's not like our general contingency for the whole
Right.
town. Good, yeah,
Right.
thank you. All right. And we're only in March. That's a bummer.
Well, and we could always add the 1.5 inch to next year's.
No, that's right, but, okay.
That's all right. It says, the larger the water meter, the higher the potential for a significant discrepancy between actual usage and metered volume. So purchasing the larger meters would more likely to positively impact water accountability. So you were talking about it's going to improve water accountability, but there's a larger discrepancy option or available?
I believe that, Kath, I believe that has something to do with the age of the meters. And the older they get, the worse they don't read. The older meters get, they don't read as well.
Huh. Okay.
That's not referring to the new meter, it's referring to the
Yes,
existing.
that is correct,
Okay.
that as meters are older, especially older style meters that have a moving part in them, they tend to read lower than what is actually being used. And so because your large meters obviously are with accounts that use larger volumes of water, any discrepancy, even if it's a few percent in what the meter is reading versus what they're actually using, would have a larger
Oh, I
change
see.
in it than if you were to replace the smaller meters. So that's why we would recommend that if you were going to only approve the budget amount, we would purchase all the largest meters and then, possibly a few of the 1.5 inch meters up to the budgeted amount, and then, try to work through the other 1.5 inch meters and possibly even later this year, depending on how the water fund goes, if that contingency amount is still not being utilized toward the end of the year, we would maybe recommend trying to purchase the remaining 1.5 inch meters at that time.
Kath, how old are the meters that are the 2-inch ones now?
Some of those meters are from the 70s. Because they are large and require special plumbing, some of them are quite old. And so, that's part of it is, they are expensive to replace and difficult to sometimes install. And so they've obviously been deferred much more than any kind of a residential meter replacement. So that's why we're trying to address some of these.
What's the manufacturer's life cycle on those, on the new ones?
On the new ones, they are 10 to 20 years, so depending on what style they are. So, basically they recommend that you start planning for meter replacement after 10 years. So we would say that the meter replacements have been completed, and then the township would, to have meters tested to check for accountability and make decisions at that point on, scheduling meter replacement going into the future. But these larger meters are, if they are newer ones, could be potentially calibrated also because of the style of meters they are.
How many do you have of those, do you know?
It's on the quote, it shows them itemized how many of each size there are. And so what we did is we went through the billing records and then also had the utility billing clerk create work orders for each individual account so that the staff went out and actually verified the size of the meter, took pictures, did measurements, because those larger meters, like I said, are much different than just plumbing in a regular residential meter.
Kath, I understand that your recommendation to defer the 1.5-inch meters is really because the quantity and the unit price of $14,250 approximately approximates the overage that
Yes.
we currently have budgeted for this entire project. But the 1.5-inch meters are still subject to the same loss factor or inaccuracy that you described for the 2-inch and greater, just at a smaller amount because they're a smaller pipe.
Yes, and so, I mean, if you were to say that there was an cumulative effect,
Right.
it could account for quite a bit of a discrepancy. But I think some of those are more recent too, because they are smaller meters and they are more standard, and because, they are less expensive, they have been replaced more recently than some of those older, larger meters. So that's why we would, try to address the biggest ones first, especially because we're not sure what the lead time is going to be on some of those. So we may be ordering them now and paying for them in October at the rate things are going, so.
But at least by doing it now, we lock in the price.
We're locking in the price, and we're getting them on order because they are quite difficult to obtain.
Right. And this whole project really goes very much not just toward replacing infrastructure, but also toward addressing where our quote-unquote leaks are. We've talked a lot in our board meetings about our water loss. What we're discussed right here and now with regard to these meters isn't necessarily water loss, but rather the loss of inability to track the water consumption because of the meter's inability to be accurate.
That's correct. So it's an accountability issue
Yep.
for those sites.
Yeah, so from my viewpoint, just sharing my thought, I'm more inclined to stick with the original list of items here and extend $12,000 or so to this budget, because I think it helps address where we're losing water elsewhere. Not necessarily physical water, but the accountability of the water and its usage. So I think with that, I don't want to jump ahead to a motion unless there's more conversation, but I'm happy to.
I would have to agree with you, Mr. Cummings.
Well,
And
I just want to
also
make,
because the price of those meters is obviously going up.
going to go up,
So we
yeah.
just we might as well bite the bullet and get it done, because they're just going to double in cost again over the next decade.
well, what I was looking at is that if we only went with the budgeted amount, we would be getting 17 meters. There's 18 of the 1.5-inch meters.
Yep.
So for an additional 12,500, we get an additional 18 meters.
Right.
To me, that, and if we're, certainly some of that is going to account for some of our water loss.
That's what
And
I'm
so
saying.
if in one way of looking at it, replacing all these meters could help offset and pay for itself through the water loss we're experiencing. Now, I think there's other factors in the water loss we're having, but
Of course.
certainly if these larger meters and even the 1.5-inch meters are, a percentage below reporting what we're actually using, that's costing us money. And so from my perspective, for an additional $12,000, roughly $500, we get an additional 17 meters, or 18 meters, excuse me. That seems like a pretty good bet there for me. So
Where would we get the additional money from? Where can we appropriate
We
it
just
from?
talked- yeah.
I just
Contingency.
use, I remember you
Contingency.
just the contingency fund?
Yeah.
I don't know. So you need two motions then? One
You need
to
a
appropriate
budget
the money and
amendment.
one to approve the expenditure?
Expenditure and then a budget amendment for
The
the,
budget amendment, okay.
All right, well, we'll start with this then. So then I move that the board approve the purchase of the meters listed in the quote for a total of $54,522.08, which will include those 1.5-inch meters. And then we will deal with the next appropriation in a moment.
Support, Spencer.
Where's the actual cash going to come from?
Well, that's what we'll deal with in the next motion.
Just the contingency fund?
she said there's
Well,
some money in
that's
the
the
contingency.
budget. That's
Yeah.
not the actual where the cash is coming from.
Oh, fair enough. Then I can continue my, then I'll continue my motion to say that the money will come from the Fund 591-000-974.000, which is the capital improvement outlay, and then we'll deal with the appropriation into that to make up for the lack of funds in a separate motion.
Still support, still Spencer.
Okay?
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishbarth?
yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed.
Now, motion number 2. So, is there a certain fund number, Tammy, for the
Yes, it would
contingency?
be 591-000-890.000.
Okay. Then now let's see, give me a moment here.
So that's your fund number that you're charging the expense to, but the cash side of it, like the actual cash, do we have the cash in the 591 to appropriate that money to?
That's what we had budgeted for this year.
Okay.
All right, I move that we allocate $10,522.08 from the Water Contingency Fund 591-000-890.000 to the Capital Improvement Outlay Fund 591-000-974.000.
Is there support?
Support, Spencer.
I'm sorry, did you say 10 or 12?
I said, oh, I'm sorry, you're absolutely right.
No, it was
I said
12,000?
10. I would say $12,000, $12,522.08. Thank you for catching that, Tammy.
Still support.
We have a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next, we have list station number 4.
All right, this item is a placeholder for lift station number 4. Kath had been waiting we were trying to do a price comparison for repairs or flat-out pump replacement. So we were waiting on that price quote. I don't think we got it.
We did not get a replacement quote, and I have referred the matter to Mr. Freeman and also to Rowe to assist. So this was a station that would have been in the next phase of the CWSRF. The pumps are 20-plus years old, and we ran into an issue where one of the pumps was leaking. When we took it apart to make a repair, we found that the pump shaft and impeller and other components were very worn. And so rather than putting a bunch of repair money into this, We can do a repair, but the repair quote I got was $15,000 plus dollars. And so we're waiting to see what the cost would be to replace the pump instead of putting that money into repairing the existing pump, which would more than likely be replaced with the next phase of the CWSRF anyway. So that's why we would get Rowe involved, is to make sure, one of the things that they were looking at when they were doing the overall pump station project is so that all the pumps are the same manufacturer, the same vendor, so that it minimizes the amount of repair parts that the township has to keep in stock if many of the pumps are the same and have common parts, and then also give you better customer support across the board with all those. So rather than replacing this pump in kind with the one that is in there, that would be a direct replacement, but it would be different than from any of the other new pumps you would be putting in. So if the township were to proceed down the path of replacing instead of repairing it, it would be a good idea to look at replacing it as you would with the pump station project, instead of just putting another pump of the same kind in there and then turning around, several years from now and potentially replacing it again.
Yeah.
Or having an odd pump in the system. So there's a little bit more to it than that. We were hoping to have more information, but right now, like I said, the repair quote that we had was for $15,000, and we're waiting on the other information.
Do you have an idea, just a ballpark cost of a new pump?
I don't know, Rick, do you remember what any of the pumps, and this is one of the larger pump stations. Pump Station 4 is the main downtown pump station, so they're not going to be inexpensive. But I don't really have any quotes on, especially what a new pump of the type that the rest of the stations are going to be, to compare it to. I'm sorry.
I'm sure it's more than 16,000.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I've always felt new is better than old. So, shall we, I guess we can postpone this?
Yeah, I do have another question real quick, though, please. So, two questions. So, do you have a time frame for when you expect to hear from Rowe? And then secondly, since we're postponing the repair, just exactly how badly is that pump limping along right now?
Well, the pump is disassembled right now, so its twin is in there running along, so we are keeping a weather eye on it.
Okay.
And of course, now the township had gone for the last station upgrade, new controls for that, so we can monitor it remotely. So if there are any issues like after hours or anything, we would get a notification from that alarm system. So that's a plus. But we have a meeting tomorrow with Rowe, as Rick said, in regard to the CWSRF, and this is one of the items we'll be discussing and trying to bring forward at that time too, and hopefully has some other information from the vendor of the existing pump type to see what the cost comparison would be.
All right, thank you. Back to Bill.
Okay.
Should I leave or should I?
Could I have a motion? Do we want to postpone this? Do we get additional information? If we had a rough idea what a pump would be,
Yeah, of course.
we might pass a motion to approve replacing up to a certain amount of money, but without having a ballpark
Yeah.
of, we're talking 50,000, 100,000, I have no idea. So
Agreed.
I guess the best thing is to postpone this. So I'll make a motion to postpone the lift station 4 proposal.
Support Listerbarth.
So we have a motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Worcesterbarth. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Worcesterbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion passed. Hopefully we can get that information soon and get that moving along. Next is several row invoices. First invoice, 107,402.
I'll make a motion that we approve invoice number 107-402 Exploration Trail for $10,588.75. from Fund 101-751-880-572.
Support Cummings.
We have a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next, we have invoice 107-605, the amount of $1,215.
Make a motion to approve invoice 107-605, Water System Improvements 2022, in the amount of $1,215 to be paid from the C2R2 after reimbursement is available.
Support Spencer.
We have a motion by Mr. Wisterbarth, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next, invoice 107-610, in the amount of $3,328.35.
I'll make a motion to approve invoice 107,610 for the wastewater pump station improvements in the amount of $3,328.35 to be paid from CWSRF after reimbursement is available.
Support Sutton.
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next, we have ordinance and amendments. Ordinance amendment, excuse me. Ms. Follett, would you like to?
Sure. I was here 2 weeks ago for the first read on the 4 ordinance amendments, and I presented all of the changes then. These are the final versions that are in the packet, so I'm just asking for that final approval tonight. And I do need a motion on each ordinance.
Any questions? We reviewed these at the last meeting. They haven't changed. Is there a motion?
Sure, I move that we accept section 6.34, the food truck, mobile food vending units ordinance as presented.
Support Sutton.
We have a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next up is Article 8
And
of the ZBA.
I think you want individuals, correct?
Yes, I need
We need
individual
We need
motions on each one,
634.1
please.
as well.
I'm sorry?
We need the next one, which is 634.1, each of those individually.
So
We
you're
just
on
did-
letter B, it would be Article 8, Zoning Board of Appeals,
Oh, I'm
Section
sorry, then-
8.3.3.
You don't need all the incremental points as well, then? Okay, sorry, my mistake. That misunderstood, because they're all listed out here. All right, fair enough. Never mind, thank you.
Yeah, the next is Article 8 of the ZBA.
Sure.
Make a motion that we adopt ordinance amendment Article 8, Zoning Board of Appeals, Section 8.3.3 as presented.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Wisterbarth, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10. This is merely removing this, which has to do with the recreational marijuana.
Sorry, where are you looking? I'm missing the part of, oh, I'm sorry, we're skipping over several sections in the packet. Thank you very much. Sorry.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Code of Ordinance, Chapter 10, Article 7.
I'll support that. We have a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed.
Okay.
Next is the Code of Ordinance, Chapter 26, dealing with the sidewalks.
Can I clarify the point you're using? You're calling it a chapter, but these are called sections. We're calling it the same thing. I don't understand where you're looking and finding the word chapter. Just to make sure we're using the same terminology.
It's under Nicole's memo.
Yeah,
Oh, got it. All right. Is
Chapter
it-
26.
Also on the agenda, under resolutions and ordinances, number 1 is ordinance amendments, and it's listed A, B, C, and D separately, and it does go over if it's a chapter, article, section.
Okay, got it, because I'm looking at the detail in the pack. I can't go back and forth
Oh.
between these things, and everything else here is listed as sections.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out, is there a difference between section or chapter?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. Back to you. Sorry. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we adopt ordinance amendment, Code of Ordinances, Chapter 26, Article 3, installation, maintenance, and/or repair of sidewalks as presented.
Support Cummings.
We have a motion by Mr. Worcester, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have our resolutions. Resolution 2023-04. It's regarding making Furtoff Field non-disposable. Any questions, comments? Motion?
I wasn't aware that, I thought we have this as an option for future development, so this would take it off that list permanently?
Well, we had one to remove it pending,
But it could be brought back at any time. If we do this,
they would have to come back by a resolution.
We'd have to have a new resolution. Take it off.
I think it kind of limits our actions for possible improvements. I mean, I know we have a study right now going for looking at a new municipal building. I think this was one of the sites.
This would not restrict that. This is only for disposing of the property.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number 2023-04 to classify Furtaw Field as a non-disposable property.
Support Sutton?
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishbarth?
No.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion passed. Next, resolution 2023-05. It's to do with the MDR Recreational Passport Grant.
Somebody giving an overview? or-
Do we have a comment on this?
Only if there's questions.
Do we?
Okay, well, so we're applying for the MDNR Trust Fund Recreation Passport Grant for ADA compliant Warrior Pavilion facilities in the bathhouse at Ratlet Park.
Okay.
And we have not spent a lot of money on Ratliff Park over the years, have we?
No.
And I think it's in need of some,
If you remember, this was one of the projects that we submitted for a Spark grant back in December. We're not selected. There is possibility of other funding now for the fishing pier and the kayak launch. So for this particular grant, we focused on the other half of the Spark grant, which was Warrior Pavilion, the restroom, bathhouse facility there by the beach, access to and from the parking lot, improved access there. Warrior Pavilion improvements will include upgrades to the ADA, accessibility, improved lighting within the pavilion, audio, for hearing impaired, and also signage within and around the facility. So basically taking that part of the Spark grant out, applying for this grant. The maximum amount we can apply for is $150,000, which requires a 25% match of the $37,500. And then, if you remember, we have other funds available. That was actually for the fishing pier and launch. I was thinking the Row donated services for the layout of the park.
right.
So that is part of the additional cost here that will take this budget up to around $200,000.
That was my question
Right.
is we're applying for 150.
Yep.
25 match would be 187.5.
Correct.
But you're saying the total project cost is 200,000.
Correct. And it
So
was
that-
roughly that 12,000 that Row committed for the park layout and all of that. And we'll be able to, and then the Bennett and Lake Association is donating towards the pier and the kayak launch, so that's separate from that, so.
Right. But in
So-
terms of this, if this grant, if we're including that money from Row, does that help in our points?
If you
Towards the
recall, for the passport grant, we cannot include money technically already spent.
Oh,
And since that was a donation already for the plans, we cannot include it. So that's why there's that discrepancy. I can't show it as part of the grant application, but the
Okay.
overall project budget is $200,000.
but it isn't going to cost the township an
No.
additional $13,000?
No, that is
Okay.
correct.
All right, that's all I was getting at. All right, do I have a motion?
Before you do the motion, so I just wanted to comment that there are actually 4 typos in this resolution. There's 3 instances of some underscore character that appears. One in the title itself, second paragraph, page 1, and it's in where it's supposed to be this quote, the Ken Ratliff Park. Well, it's got this weird underscore at the beginning of Ken. And then on page 2, there's in the second to last paragraph where it says, now therefore be it resolved, there's underscore characters in the $ of the $200,000. There's no space before project. And the year range has got that weird underscore character stuck in it as well. So if we could just correct it before we actually execute it, I'd appreciate that. That's all I had.
Those would appear to be some typographical errors.
There's typos, yep. Yeah, 4 typos. 3 are the same, and 1 is a lack of a space. It's got a dollar figure that runs into the word project.
Well, I'd make a motion to approve resolution number 2023-05 with the corrections that Mr. Cummings has brought forward.
Support, Worcester Barth?
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Worcesterbarth. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes. Mr.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next up is the resolution 2023-06, relating to the engineering service for 2024 CWSRF.
So this finalizes the process of making sure that these fees will be included in the project plan for funding. We have to follow Eagle's request that resolution be passed awarding those services, identifying that the project was properly advertised and such, and it was a qualification-based selection and not a price proposal.
Can you repeat that last word and not a,
That it was a qualification-based selection and not a price proposal.
thank you.
Right.
Yeah, this had to do with the advertising for
Correct.
requests for qualifications.
Correct.
My understanding is Rowe was the only one that applied.
That is correct. But their proposal was reviewed, and they did meet all of the criteria that they needed to include. So,
Okay.
Good, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number 2023-06, Charter Township, Oscoda, resolution regarding professional engineering services.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is the board and subcommittee appointments. I asked to have this put on primarily, there's several boards and committees that the supervisor is normally on. I wanted to get approval from the board so that I can be the supervisor representative on the airport board. There was, Ms. Richards was going to attend that meeting 4 weeks ago, but it got canceled because the manager's father passed away. So it's been rescheduled for this Friday. So I wanted to get approval from the board for me to sit on that board.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Palmer to the Airport Authority Board.
Support. You can have it.
Was that you, Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would point out that Mr. Wusterbarth is still the alternate on that committee. We have a motion by Mr. Wusterbarth, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Thank you. Next one I wanted to cover was the 911 board. Mr. Spencer has been the alternate on that. He's attended several of their meetings. I had a discussion with him as whether he would like to remain on that board as the lead. I would be willing to be the alternate. That would be my suggestion.
I'm okay with that. Do you want to make for the airport thing, then it's traditionally the supervisor's responsibility to take that board.
Yes.
But for the rest of these boards, somebody that takes the new seat might want one of those. Should we wait to make
Well, we
these, or-
have several other boards that will need appointments that board members can go on.
Okay.
These are just ones I wanted to get covered, that we probably have meetings coming up.
I'm okay with it. I
Those.
wanted to point that out.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve Mr. Spencer to the 911 board and Mr. Palmer to be the alternate on that board.
Support Cummings.
You got it.
I have a motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Wusterbarth. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mr. Wusterbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion passed. One last one is the negotiating team. That was,
I don't see any of these on this list.
no, they weren't
Oh,
They weren't
okay.
included in that list. This was the, myself, Mr. Cummings, and the supervisor. So we need one more person to be on that committee. Basically, this will be to review Ms. Klein's contract. It's been way overdue. We were waiting for the attorney to return that. I think we need to get together and finalize the review that the attorney did and the revisions to the contract so we can approve that. It's been long enough now to get that, so.
Yeah.
Do
I have an interest on that.
Mr. Westerbarth?
Yeah, I'd like to continue.
So do I have a motion?
What is the change? Is it just to replace yourself?
Replacing
Well,
it.
because you're replacing yourself as trustee, but
As
taking over
trustee.
supervisor, opening a position,
Yes.
and that's for, okay, got it.
So the committee would consist of myself, Mr. Cummings, and Mr. Westerbarth.
Okay, very good.
So moved.
Support?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Wurschbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next on, I asked Tammy to add this for,
One of the ones that are actually listed in the board packet is incorrect. I didn't know if we were going to update those. Is that why they're in here? Oh, okay. I guess, all right then.
But you can give your suggestions to Mr. Sutton, who keeps that record.
Oh, okay.
'Cause I know-
Mr.
I noticed
Romani
there
is
was a
no
few
longer on
that-
the EIC, and he's listed on here.
yes, several of these, the names
Yeah.
need to be updated, and I don't,
I believe I'm the alternate for Cedar Lake, but it's not even listed there. But,
let's see.
That is correct.
Yeah.
I'll talk to them on that.
Yeah.
okay, that's the
Lot
only
of these
two I
need-
noticed,
A lot
yeah.
of these need to be updated. The planning commission, there's 2 members on there that aren't
Did you
there
say you're the
anymore.
co on Cedar Lake?
Yeah.
Are these the only changes you're going to propose, Bill?
I'm sorry?
Are these the only changes? you
For
said?
right now, yes. I want to, well, later in the agenda here, we have set a special meeting for March 17th to interview and approve the new trustee. And I'd like to get them on so at our next board meeting on the 24th, we can fill some of these positions on some of these boards and do it with including the new members on the board. But these were ones that I thought needed to be approved right now. Like I said, the airport board is supposed to meet Friday, and I wanted to make sure I had the board's approval to attend that meeting. So the next was something I asked to be added for payment of bills. Since we don't have a meeting on, our normal meeting on the 10th, we don't want to have our bills not get paid. We do this, something similar, we do this in December when we only have the one meeting, so we can still pay our bills. Mr. Sutton or Mr. McGuire can probably speak to this better than I can.
Well, you covered it pretty well.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Well, I'll make a motion to approve paying April's bills and to review at the April 24th board meeting.
Support, Spencer.
We have a motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wurschbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next, we have a request for a lot split. Ms. Villette, do you get some information on that?
I do, yep. We had a request for a lot split, and last week Nancy kind of showed me the ropes on what to do with some of this, so I hope I have all the answers for you if you have questions. Essentially, if you go to the proposed change, it lays out the property the way that they would like to split everything. So there are addresses listed on that sheet, and the neighbor on one side, 7720, and the neighbor on the other side, 7716. They bought this property in between them, and they just need to split off 10 feet wide by about 68 feet long. And the reason for that is because there's a building on lot 47, so that 10 feet gives that 10-foot side setback for that accessory structure that's there. So they're going to do, they want to split that lot and then also do combinations. You're just approving the lot split. But then they are again going to combine so that 7720, 7718 is going to be one parcel. That's lot 45 and 46. And then lot 47 and 48 will be one parcel. In two parcels.
Is Nan, oh, sorry.
These are two separate property owners that are working together to do this?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yep.
I noticed that Nancy signed the documents too. Is she still acting in an official capacity for the township?
She's an assessing consultant.
Yeah, it's
We
listed
do have a
there.
contract with her.
I just saw her signing a bunch of these documents, and I thought we just hired a new company to do all that, so
So
is she just helping out, or?
they, the new company is not doing the splits and combinations. It does still have to happen at our office, so I'm going to be the point of contact and take in all the forms, the payments, and get the process started, and then I take it to the different departments, which would be myself with zoning, treasury department, water, sewer, and then the final sign-off is Nancy, and the forms will be changed to say assessor consultant, where she signs.
Cool.
I just thought of a question, Nicole. Do we need to add, does the assessor need to review what the consultant is saying because he is the assessor?
Once I'm complete and have all of the sign-offs, it goes into the basket in Tara's office that, the mail for the new assessor. So the forms do still get mailed to them. They do have to process them and make the new parcel numbers, and then reflect that information in BS&A. But to get to that point, they aren't doing that. So I'm doing that now.
Okay.
Instead of Nancy.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? We have a motion.
Make a motion that we approve lot split 064-L10-000-046-00, lot 46 of Assessor Plat of Lake Huron, Sand Beach sub as presented.
Support, Spencer.
We have a motion by Mr. Wusbar, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Wusterbark?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes,
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next up is the Chamber of Commerce request.
Okay, so you have a letter from the Chamber requesting a letter of support for grant funding through Developed by Osco, called the Community Improvement Grant, to repair and upgrade the electrical facilities at the beach park. I guess if you have any questions about the grant, Ms. Brainowell's here, but I would like to request that the board approve me to write a letter of support for this grant, for the Chamber.
Well, I'd just like to say I appreciate the Chamber of Commerce helping out with this old, outdated electrical system we have down there. I think this will appreciate you going after this money to improve that for us down there.
I think Ms. Brainowell just wants to plug in some heavy equipment down there for very loud concerts.
Whatever. Do I have a motion?
I would move to approve the Oscoda Au Chamber of Commerce requests for a letter of support.
Support, Sutton?
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wusterbark?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion passed. Let's see. Next is a discussion with the board on potentially adding a permanent finance director position for Oscoda Township.
Yes, Mr. Palmer, I asked that that be added to the agenda for a discussion. It's not something I'd want acted on tonight, and I'm bringing this to the board as something for us to consider in the future. After doing a lot of research around the state with different townships that do have finance directors, one of the main reasons there is elected officials come and go. This keeps continuity of township finances going forward. It's typically managed out of the supervisor's position and/or the superintendent, depending on how the township has that set up. Specifically, with that being said, White Lake Township, which is down in Metro Detroit, northern Oakland County, has this enacted. They've had it for a number of years, working together with their supervisor. They do not have a superintendent. Those duties stay with the supervisor. But the three, the supervisor, clerk, and treasurer, work together in conjunction with the finance director. The finance director maintains most of the township finances and reporting structures, going back to the board through the supervisor. White Lake has graciously opened up their door for us for a field trip. If we would like to come down and talk to them and their board and their current staff, including the finance director, to inquire on how this works for them. I would like to see this board take a field trip to White Lake Township with our superintendent and the entire board to sit down with Mr. Colwell at White Lake Township and his staff and talk about what works for him, what works for them, and then what does not work for them. And the opportunity to improve the situation that we have today. So this is something that I would like to see the board agree to take a field trip, to do an investigative trip, and then come back and we can have a discussion maybe through a work session if this is the direction that potentially we would like to go.
Are the clerk and the treasurer full-time?
Clerk and the treasurer are full-time, as well as the supervisor.
And the financial director also?
Full-time, separate position. Reports to the supervisor. And I believe the other township down in that area is Grand Blanc Township. We've got to confirm that again. I had it written down, but I lost my note.
What township did you say, Steve? I didn't hear it.
I think it was Grand Blanc Township
Blanc,
is the
okay.
other one that...
White Lake Township was the other
White
one.
Lake is this. White Lake Township did provide a draft to me of their finance director. I rewrote it a bit and added a few things because I'd like to have this position do some training that unfortunately didn't happen with the last CPA.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Training.
For whom?
The clerk and the treasurer were to get training. The clerk got zero training, according to that. That is the main reason. I'll tell you, that's a big reason, as well as the CPA not informing or understanding that Ms. Klein was the lead contact there.
Actually, Ms. Klein isn't the lead contact. It never has been when there's a CPA or the auditors. They always contact the clerk and the treasurer. And the statement that you made at the meeting when we fired him was incorrect, actually. So I wasn't there.
Please clarify.
Absolutely. You said that he said the books were all clean and we were all set. We could do all of our own entries now. That was not a correct statement.
Okay, well, I'll have to go back and look at that statement, but as far as the CPA coming into Township Hall, he was supposed to report to the superintendent because that was my motion. And the superintendent was going to disseminate his duties between you and Josh. That didn't happen.
I can't speak to that. I know the next morning when he came in, I took him down the hallway to make sure that Tammy, it was okay for him to be in the building. And she said absolutely, and he worked with me and Josh both that day, so.
Yeah, I'm aware of that meeting. That was the first time that happened.
Yeah.
So,
What did he train you on? If Josh didn't get any training, did he train you on things?
I didn't get trained on how to do the entries. He was cleaning up all the stuff from the 6 months that Josh was behind on bank recs, all the money that was, I moved money from the investment accounts that Josh didn't know how to do, moving the money in the general ledger yet, so he was doing that and setting up a system for all of that and getting the books cleaned up for the audit, basically.
Which
And-
just leads into, yes, we kind of do need a finance director here. Okay.
No, you really don't, actually. You need people that are competent to do their job.
Well, I like the idea of having consistency in the township. When you have elections and you get new people in offices, there aren't any requirements for a clerk or treasurer. They don't have to be a CPA or really no, you have to be of age and a resident. Those are really the only requirements of anybody that runs for any of these offices. And so to have a person versed in finance that could continue that when new people come in, I think would be of value. I don't think that's something we have to decide tonight. I like the idea of going down and talking to people and see how their system is working and get an idea of how it works for them, if it would be appropriate for us. I think that part of it, of having that continuity in finances throughout the years would be a bonus. But I think we need to look into it a little farther, see what the cost would be for a permanent position, and then go from there. I don't think that's, it probably would, we can have further discussion, but, at the most it would be something we'd be including in the next budget. So during the next budget process, we could review and get some information on that and decide if that's a direction we want to go.
I thought the superintendent's job was the one that was supposed to hold continuity. That's because they're a constant person. When the elected officials change over, you have somebody in that superintendent's position that can be there for the continuity and the history and things to help guide the departments.
Well, that would be true if our superintendent was here for a long period of time, but that has not been the case recently.
Well,
Unfortunately, I agree. If we had a superintendent that stayed for a long period of time, that would have the continuity for that. But if, board members come and go, superintendents come and go, if you have a person that's on staff that can add that continuity, I think that's a bonus. But that's something we'll have to discuss further as a board in a work session or something. Try and determine what the cost would be for that, because I have no idea what salary range that would be for that kind of a position. So I think Mr. Whisper, you just intend this to be a discussion tonight, not
I intended this to
action.
be a discussion for further down the road as we develop our budget, but I would like to make a motion that in the next 2 months, I would like to get a few dates from this board where they're available to take a field trip to White Lake, so I can arrange a possible visit with us and them prior to getting into our budget planning this summer. So I'd like to see that happen before the end of May.
Any thoughts?
Nope.
Wouldn't be a bad idea to go talk to them about it. See what their shortfalls are, how it's helped, how it hasn't helped, how it's made some things worse, how it's made some things better. And the only real way to do that is if we go down and talk to them. I would support Mr. Wusterbar's motion.
I think my only comment is, as I'm kind of looking at this and thinking this through, is just that I'm interested, I'm curious to know what they're doing and how they're doing it. But my curiosity is more because of the point that I made some years ago at the end of my previous term, much like what Mr. Palmer just summarized earlier, that when treasurers and clerks change over, as we had in the last election, and we now have a new clerk, experience does walk out the door, and it does create a problem for the township. We've battled with where the certain duties and responsibilities should lie, regardless of statute and regardless of what seemingly We try to keep, the division of, and what is it, the division of duties so that we can maintain checks and balances. But it's more to the point of just making sure that there's protection for the township, because continuity is what's important. It's good that the people have an opportunity to vote in who they want to hold those positions, but the day-to-day function of the financial role isn't a requirement for any of these positions. And while we have, as an example, we have Mr. Sutton here as a clerk, he had no accounting experience, which has led to problems, which not only has Ms. McGuire pointed out, but we've seen as we've looked into it. And it's an example of why should we have to go through any of these situations when, when they're avoidable. We can have somebody there who is quote unquote permanent. I mean, that's a concept that I had some years ago. I'm interested in the concept. I didn't know how we could implement it, and if there's a place like you suggest downstate that has this implemented and been running for years, I'm just curious to know how it looks. And this has nothing to do with anything negative here of anybody here on the board, the treasurer, the clerk. I just want to know how it's being done. And to the questions that Mr. Spencer mentioned, what's the pluses and what's the negatives? I'm just trying to have an open mind here.
I have a few things to say. First of all, I'm curious, obviously, because is White Lake Township a charter township, or are they a city?
They're a charter township.
So in the charter, it says that they can't take away your duties unless you give written permission to do that. So obviously, they have done that, and I'm curious to how long that this process has been going on with them. But so I am interested in the field trip, for sure, just out of curiosity's sake and to have an open mind as well. But to a couple of Tim's points, honestly, you said we've looked into it. I haven't talked to any board member, hasn't come to talk to me or Jane. I don't know if Jane, has anybody come to talk to you? Also, when you do get elected, you're right. I didn't know. I mean, I worked in there part-time and did the accounts payable in 1997 for 3 years, went to the clerk's office, was deputy clerk there, and then put my hat in for the treasurer's job after the recall and won, and have been there ever since. Right. But that's why we go to training. That's why you go to training to learn your job. That's why you take the software classes. That's why you spend hours and hours and hours and learn to do things the correct way. And actually, honestly, I'll say the most that I've learned was from the CPAs, from having the audits done. It's not a bad thing when you have an audit done. They are helping you with the new rules, regulations, things like that, and help you through the process. It isn't always about like, oh my God, you did a terrible thing. You're learning. It's a learning curve, and that's what they're there for. So it's consistency and being conscientious in your job and taking the time to learn it is what's important.
To that point, though, you can't expect somebody that just comes in to have the same level of experience after 4 years as you have after 20.
Oh, I absolutely not.
So even if he took every class that is possibly fathomable, there's not enough hours in the day.
No, you're right.
So I appreciate where you're coming from, and I'm excited that we're going to do this field trip, because we'll have the opportunity to ask these questions to those people that are in where we're looking at going, and seeing if that's going to be something that will benefit us and our citizens. So I'll be there. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I have a question, because there's a comment here about this was discussed. I believe this was brought to the board prior to our election. Mm-hmm. This election, where I got elected on this board. It was brought by the superintendent at the time, I believe, to the board for consideration. Is that what you're referring to, Mr. Cummings?
Yes, it is.
I just want to clarify that.
Oh, absolutely. There was 2 resolutions that were written that was delineating the township clerks and the responsibilities of the treasurer also, which is against the law. Oh, I remember it well myself.
Well, we have a motion on the table for a field trip. A motion by Mr. Worcesterbar, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Worcesterbar?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion passed. And Mr. Westbrook, will you make contact to get a couple of dates?
I will do that and
Available?
confer those times with the superintendent.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
She can relate to the board.
Next on the agenda is a discussion of hiring Mr. Miller as a part-time finance director, CPA.
And that is something that I brought here. I would like to look at us employing Mr. Mark Miller as a part-time employee, working under the superintendent with the roles and responsibilities that I've kind of outlined in the finance director position. I would like for him to focus on some financial training for the board during this time. As we're going through the audit, Mr. Miller has been a CPA for a number of years, and he has a lot of experience in auditing for large commercial accounts. He's semi-retired now. He's local. Mr. Miller isn't new to the township. He's run for the county commissioner, I think twice in the last 2 elections. And I would like to just try this for the next 3 to 4 months to see how it goes as we're going through the audit.
Does he still hold his CPA license?
He has his license in 2 states, and I'm not looking at that as a requirement, just as he has experience.
I have to disagree with that.
I'm looking at this as a more training position to help us find out what's wrong with our financial systems, provide the training, and offer solutions.
Well, you said you want to have these duties that are outlined here, and a lot of them are duties of the superintendent, the clerk, and the treasurer.
Well, we can disseminate the duties that we would like him to do. I would like him to be part-time to help us and assist us in the township finance.
I would like to see a direct list of the duties that he will be doing before I would vote for that. That's just me, though.
Okay, well, I'm going to use the list that I have in the packet at this time.
Well,
And we can disseminate those going forward if the board so chooses.
yes, you can. Absolutely. Please do.
Are there any specific ones that you don't want him to look at? That you're, like, the duties of your specific office that you feel
Yep,
like
anything that has anything to do with the treasurer's office, I am not giving permission for anybody else to do it myself.
not do it, but I mean, okay, yeah, okay.
It says
Any
interface
function.
with the treasurer's staff regarding tax collections, debt service, and bank reconciliations.
Also says supporting financial report, talks about, let me see if I'm on my list here. Manage the accounting for multiple special assessments and maintain special assessment districts. Those are part of the tax account, so that would be a no. Also, audit, revise, provide process related solutions for improvement for the financial systems with the township. That is actually the superintendent, clerk, treasurer, and the board. Implementation of new accounting and payroll software. BS&A is the best software that there is. That's ridiculous to even consider. Monthly financial reporting to the Board of Trustees. Also, again, something the superintendent and the clerk and treasurer also do. That, yeah, no, they shouldn't, I mean, let's see, a couple other ones here. Performs month-end general ledger, review reconciliations of all funds, including accounts payable, cash accounts. He's not doing any of the cash accounts. I am not
So those
giving my
four?
permission for anybody else to be in the system. That is up to Josh and Tammy if they want to give written permission to do that.
But you allow any CPA that we hire to come in and do that,
You're right, I do.
okay?
He's not a CPA.
He has a CPA in 2 states. I'm not asking him to bring his CPA license to Michigan.
And actually,
I'm asking him to come
Mark
in
does
and
not do
provide
the bank
training.
reconciliations. He does not do any of the functions. He looks at the trial balance and does the audit adjustments. He does that. If you want to pay him to do the audit adjustments, that's what you're doing for year end, absolutely. But this specifically talks about doing the reconciliations. Reconciliations of all funds, including accounts payable, cash accounts. Also talks about it doing Tammy's job, which is budgeting. also talks about doing Josh's job for the accounts payable, the accounts receivable, and the general ledger.
Providing assistance.
No, it doesn't say providing assistance in there.
Okay, well, let me make it simple. I would like to hire, the board to consider hiring Mark Miller on a part-time basis for duties that can be assigned to him for our financial system to assist the clerk, treasurer, and superintendent in the daily functions of the township. And I'll ask Mr. Palmer and Ms. Klein to delineate the responsibilities before he starts.
I want to see them in writing and come before the board and be voted on.
That's my motion.
I would like to make a comment since you backwards motioned without a motion. So if you, yeah, so we can, that wasn't a motion. That's a point of order, Mr. Palmer. So before we get to the motion, I'd want to just bring the point up that I don't think that the title of financial director is appropriate considering what we're describing right now. A financial director isn't something we'd hire for 2 or 3, 4 months, but rather a financial consultant, if you want to call it anything. So I would be more interested to stay away from this, with all due respect, a hot topic of financial director as a title when he's not being hired as a financial director per se. He's just being asked to come in and do training and to try to fulfill some of these other roles. So I would just propose a different title to make sure that the scope and the title make more sense. That was it. Thank you.
I would just like to say that Ms. McGuire is correct. Both her and the clerk have statutory duties that are delegated to the treasurer and the clerk, and the board can't take those duties away unless it's agreed to by the treasurer or the clerk. But I do think we've had a CPA in here in the past. I think it would be a benefit to have a CPA going forward, especially we're coming up to audit time, to have a CPA here to help. So if we want to propose a motion to hire Mr. Miller?
I'll withdraw both my motions and change it to, I would like to hire Mr. Mark Miller as a financial consultant to the township that will not touch on statutory duties for the treasurer or the clerk unless it's allowed by either one of them. And this position would report to the superintendent for duties assigned by her for the township finance.
Okay. Is there support?
I'll support it. Spencer.
We have a motion by Mr. Wisterbarth, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
No.
Mr. Worstebarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
No.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes. Motion passed. Next up, we have the proposed special meeting for board to make a trustee appointment for April 17th at 10 o'clock.
Can you give me that again, Bill?
April 17th, that's Monday at 10 o'clock.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And do we have a duration at all in mind, or do we not know?
We have to be out of the library by 12:30.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks.
The purpose for this is the applications for the new trustee position have to be in by the 14th. I would like to have this meeting so we can make that appointment and then have that individual available for the April 24th meeting so we can get back to a full board. Any other discussion, questions? So I will make a motion to approve a special township board meeting on April 17th at 10 o'clock at the library to review trustee of applications and make an appointment to the trustee position.
Support, Worcester Barth.
We have a motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Worcester. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Worcester?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next up is the State Land Bank Authority blight elimination. Mr. Sutton, you had some information on that?
Yeah, and I just wanted to update you guys, just discussion, there's no action needs to be taken. But I've been working with Oscoda County on the State Land Bank Authority. It's a blight elimination program. Secure $21,500 for demolition of condemned property in Oscoda Township. Today I was informed that we have been selected as a successful respondent for grant funding in the amount of $21,500 to complete a blight elimination activities. And upon completed training, the county and ourselves will get those funds. The training's coming up. Mine's on Good Friday. And then I know our county controller has to take it as well, and then those funds will be released to the county and then to us.
So this is, this will be approved?
Yes.
For the township for $21,500?
Yes.
And it says demolition of a condemned property. Do we have a specific property? Is that a specific property in mind?
Yes, we do. We had one that we had got an estimate for and didn't have the funds for last year.
Oh, okay.
And that's one that we had on the shelf ready when the county approached us, so we were able to do this. And this is part of what they're doing at the county. A lot of these grants are done as a collaborative of all the townships and the county. And we find when we apply for those, we have a better chance of getting those funds for the recycling, broadband, all of those have been full county initiatives with municipal support.
Great. How much was the total that the county got?
The county in total got $79,407 to complete blight elimination activities in Oscoda County, and that was Oscoda, Tawas, and Plainfield.
Okay. So we're getting almost a quarter of that.
Yep.
So we don't need any action on that?
No, that was just informational for you guys.
Next topic is the accounts payable discussion.
I thought somebody in the audience had put that on the agenda, so does she
Yes.
need to come to the podium then?
I thought Josh was going to, because this is mainly directed to Mr. Sutton, that he would be discussing the questions that Ms. Brown had asked.
Does she get to come to the podium and have discussion then?
If she
Since she
would
put it
like.
on there?
I would,
I think that's up to you.
that's up to Bill, though.
Oh,
Sure.
up to Bill.
It's up to Bill.
Sure. You want to come up? You proposed this and got it in a timely manner so we could get it on the agenda?
Oh, they got this fancy new microphone. So I had sent, at the last meeting, I made some comments with regards to the accounts payable and some things that I had FOIA'd with regards, one that I had FOIA'd that I can go over with you today is Wex Bank. In just 2022, we had about $3,800 in finance charges alone. And that was the reason for my questions at the public comment at the last meeting of how are these bills paid? Are they net 30? Are they net 15? Clerk Sutton gave me the feedback that they are net 15 on Wex Bank, but we also go through every 2 weeks, not only a prepay, but a check run. So why or how did we end up with $3,800 in finance charges? And are we in a situation where other accounts, I FOIA'd a couple others, but we apparently have a new FOIA procedure where we have an automatic 10-day extension, and then now we're incurring a FOIA attorney review, which I wasn't aware of changing the procedures. So if you want a FOIA audience, make sure you get 10 days in advance, because all of them are getting hit with a 10-day extension request. So my concern with the accounts payable is that some of the items were listed, like we had some gas charges that were under I think it was Old Orchard, but they said police on them. So I think the labels are getting changed when they get put under certain departments. And then we've got other items that were brought up by the treasurer with regards to some accounts were being overpaid, and we had some checks that had like $14,000 in credits. We had some other accounts that were, money was paid, but then it was returned. And I went back and listened to 2018, the auditor, and they said the highest level of assurance, which is required by the state of Michigan, is an audit, and we're required to have an audit. But this goes a little bit beyond that. We have no idea how much money has been paid out. Like, one of the items I was going to bring up earlier, but I missed the first comment because, Bill, your first meeting was not only on schedule, but was ahead of schedule. So congratulations. Way to run a first meeting. But
Don't hold your breath going forward.
well, I'm usually a few minutes late, so I would appreciate that. But one of the items today, we had a payment to IT Right Services for our IT contracting for the township, and we've got January, February, and March being all paid out of this check run. So are they charging us quarterly, or are we just behind in bill payments for them? Do you know, Josh? That was on this month's financials.
Those were received by the superintendent assistant, and we changed over to email, and they just changed those over and sent all 3 of them to me, so that's why they're processed in this run.
Well, but we haven't had a vacancy for 3 months in that position. I mean, doesn't our IT automatically forward? Well, it doesn't matter. My point of coming up here is that we don't know where our accounts payable are, and we don't know where our budget is. And I don't think we need a finance director to figure all that out. I think we just need to do a forensic audit, backtrack who we've paid according to the invoices, look at where those accounts were debited, and figure out where our money is. I mean, we've got $45,000 from Kratos that we thought we got back, and everybody cheered and clapped, and then we find out we didn't get it back, so now we gotta go chase that. And we're incurring these attorney's fees, and I just think if you could just do an audit, get a baseline of where everything is at. Who's got the extra money that's paid? Figure out your training, whatever, but for the township and the constituents, like, these are tax dollars. You can't be writing checks for $14,000 over. Like, you got to pull it together. There's got to be a point where what we're billed and what we pay balance out to zero.
Could we take one of your questions at a time? Let's start with the WEX account. Do you want to talk on that
Yeah, which
subject?
WEX we had talked about, and I answered her at the last meeting. That one is a 15-day to pay, and they mail that out. And when we first took over, we were receiving that in the mail before we got access to the online account. And we were receiving that roughly around the 13th of the month, which left 2 days to get it out for payment. And if it's not received by the 15th by WEX, doesn't matter what it's postmarked as. Like a lot of our other vendors, if it's postmarked before the date due, they're fine with that. WEX is not. We get a discount based on that being paid. But that one, we do, now I get that, and that goes in on that first check run. If there's any delay, then I overnight that check so it gets there in time so we don't have that.
Well, how do you get to $3,800 in finance fees? How do you get
Those
there?
are your discount per month comes back when that's.
No, that's not your discount per month. I have your invoices right here. It says right on your line item on the bill, finance charge. We've paid I see where your credits are for your discounts. They're on here. Remember I FOIA'd all these? I've gone through them. This is only 2022. We've also got other accounts that were brought up by the treasurer that have overpayments. I mean, Josh, I get it. It happened. Let's just put it all on the table and let's get this straightened out, figure out what your training issues are. What I'm saying to the board about accounts payable is, your constituents want to know where their money is. We got $45,000 here, we got $14,000 there, we got $3,800 in late fees.
Okay.
You know, we got to figure it out.
Okay, let's, did you have anything else you wanted to cover on any of these? It sounds like you've...
Can you clarify what this point is about the discounts, or what you're saying there?
Well, when they come in, the
I'm not
financial
clear.
charges go on there, but that's based on you paying in time. So then the financial charges go on there.
I don't understand. So you're telling me that if I get an invoice for $100 in gas, that they're putting finance charges on there in advance before I've sent a payment?
No.
Okay, well, then I don't understand
Yeah, the
this.
minute we're late, no. I was in reference to our discount, we get an upfront discount. So that's affected when that's late. That's why I send those up.
I didn't get that. So explain that to me one more time.
You have your finance charges when they were late,
Yep.
and that affects the discount we were getting on those 4 when we were charged.
Right, so we were late,
Right.
is the point. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
so
how we're
we-
getting these $3,800 in finance
Yes.
charges. Okay, got it. And then we get discounts, which I know might lessen that amount, but still, it's not a
No.
zero, a net zero.
Right.
Fair enough, okay, got it. So, all right, so is this $3,800 the result of finance charges after discounts or before discounts?
Those were a result of being late.
No, but is that total of $3,800 less by discounts?
No,
Or that's what we're left with after discounts?
that's just the finance charges themselves.
Okay, so we don't have discounts yet applied to that.
Right.
Okay, got it. So that's
Well,
the
here's,
most,
if I could interject, here's an example in June, and this might clarify it for you. We had 11,000, I think that's 174 in purchases. We had 174 in discounts, and then we had a finance charge from the prior month for late payment of 1,175. That was in June. So the 3,800 is cumulative over the whole 2022 months.
I'm tracking, I knew that.
But yeah, it's net the discount,
I get that.
our bill is.
Yep, I get that. I get that now, thank you. So I just wanted to know whether, because the 3,800's been bounced around, I wanted to make sure I understood what that number
Yeah.
was describing. Okay, all right, so fine. So, and this is because, again, you're saying they're such sticklers to the deadline as to when they receive payment.
Yes.
And so if it's late, out of curiosity, what's the percentage rate on that account for interest? When you're talking about these late fees, what are we being charged based on what rate?
They didn't break it to a percentage.
Okay, but it's got to be a percentage. I mean, it's not just a flat amount every month. It's got to be based on a total, on whatever our current total is. You know, it's like a credit card, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's right, yeah, so
Doesn't it say?
does it have that on the invoice?
It doesn't have the percentage, but if you look back here, this was June, let me tell you what May's total was. So May's total was 94, I think that's a 9, 94.47, or 94.71, and so our finance charge in June that we paid for was 1,173, so we're over 10% on the late fees.
Can I ask, what is the total owed on that statement? They've generated $1,000 for that month,
Yeah, on the, do you want the May or the June?
whichever, pick one.
Yeah, so May's total was 9,471, and in June, our finance charge, which would be for the month prior, was the 1,173. And I understand the 15-day thing, I get that, but these are throughout the entire year. This wasn't just like January through March.
Right.
This was throughout the entire year.
Have we
So-
had any late fees on anything? When's the last time we had a late fee on that Wix account?
Should be last year, because that's when I started overnighting them when we weren't in, because we were sending them and they still weren't getting there in time.
So we haven't had any this year.
Right.
You corrected that. Okay. Do you have any more specific questions for Mr. Sutton?
Not with regards to that. I know Jamie brought up some about some accounts payable and stuff, and like I said, I did do a FOIA on some other accounts, but I don't have those back today. I thought I would have them because I went in and paid the fee last Tuesday, but they had to redact some information that was going to take 3 business days, but I didn't receive them today. So as far as specifics, those were the 2 main areas, the late fees, and then also on the check run that we look at monthly, they're listed under one account, but the label, it clearly states that it's for a different account. So like you have your 509, whatever the numbers are, and it should be for that particular account, but then you look at the description and the amount, and it says it's for like the police department, for example. So the descriptions, you know, I don't know how that's managed, if it's a BS&A thing or what exactly it is, But there just seems to be a lot of issues with money, and I don't think we need bigger government. I think we just need better government. I think we just need to look at where the holes are, and we need to get the appropriate training and not increase our budget with more people trying to figure out what's wrong. We know what's wrong. It's right here on paper. There's $3,800 right here. So that's really what I wanted you guys to discuss, is having a forensic audit on our accounts payable and figure out exactly where any outstanding holes are for getting money back, and just take an accounting of it. So, you know, we seem to be moving a lot of money around, and I'm not sure that we need to be doing all that.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
thank you for the
Thank you
time
very
and for
much.
putting it on the agenda.
Yes. Is there any other board comment? Jamie, did you have anything you wanted to talk about?
I do. If Josh, are you all set?
Yeah, unless you have any questions.
Nope, I just wanted to make the board aware. I said at the last meeting, when I said if I see something, I'm going to say something. And I don't know if I have enough, but you guys might have to share. And Bill, you've already seen it, but I don't know if you and Josh want to share, maybe. And this is something that Kelly kind of touched on. And Bill, we sat down and I want to give Bill credit for literally after the special meeting, he came in and we sat down with me, Josh, and Tammy, and Bill sat down and talked about a lot of the things that are going on with accounts payable, and other things too. So it was really helpful, so I appreciate that. And moving forward, hopefully we can keep going in the
Can you
same
walk us
direction.
through this, what you've handed out to us? Can you
Pardon?
walk us through what you've handed out? What did you want to highlight? I see some notes on the
yes.
side and highlighters, but can you tell us what you're trying to direct our attention to?
So this paper is actually from the January 9th regular board meeting. What it is the payables, a list of payables that went to the board to be approved.
Okay.
This is what we look at and go, hey, we're going to pay this, you know, this is okay to pay, it's not okay to pay.
Right.
So the stuff that's highlighted, where you see utilities, and the number should be for any department. So like your first number, for anybody that's not familiar with fund numbers, your first set of numbers is your department number. So under 509, for utilities, it would be 509-000-921-000. And then when the topic comes up, it says utilities and electricity. And then the board looks at that and says, okay, and there's the address that it's paying for, the amount, and everything else. So we can look at this and go, yep, this is supposed to be for utilities, that's consumer's energy bill, says right on there what the vendor is that you're paying. So if you look under Old Orchard Park on this that came to the board, you can see the very first one says 509-775-000. However, the description line says utilities and electricity, and the vendor says consumer's energy. However, 509-775 is not for utilities. I'm not sure for that one for sure, but if you look down further for 509-930, that's for repairs. So what was happening is the description line item was being backed over, and the word repairs was being taken out, and utilities and electricity was being typed in. And then the vendor next to it was consumer's energy. So, and there's quite a few. It could happen, could be an accident, it happens. However, there's repeated for different departments, repeated for different bills that was happening for gas, getting charged to the wrong accounts, which is messing up people, has to be messing up people's budgets tremendously. And when we asked the clerk in this meeting why this was happening, he said he was doing it so he knew what he was charging it to. The budget line was out of money for the year because this was for December's bills. If you look at it, the month before for November, it was charged to the right accounts. The month after, it was charged to the right accounts. He had to physically go in and change it. Our BS&A system, again, I love BS&A. Seriously, it's so underutilized here. We have an audit trail. You can go in and you can see what you change, if it's a description, if it's amount, or if you change the fund number, or if you change something, it's going to tell you the exact thing that happened on that day. And so for all these things, you can go in and see that, and I have a copy of that, if the, it should be the second sheet that you guys have.
Yep.
It shows that the item description was changed.
Right.
From equipment to utilities and electricity. So I will leave it up to the board and to the public to decide what they want to, you know, how you're going to accept that information.
So
Did anybody else have a
Questions?
question, comment?
I do, I just wondered, so when did you notice that this went wrong? Was it part of an audit or something you may have done when you may have noticed maybe
actually,
the change or what?
Jane caught that when she was going through and she's filing and getting ready for audits coming up, and we were having overpayments and we weren't sure why would these budget lines be so out of whack. You know, gas I think was $57,000 over budget. I mean,
Right.
that's crazy. So she was looking into it and then came across these, and there it was.
I get it, thank you.
Mr. Sutton, do you have a comment on this?
Those would be the same comment I gave you guys in the meeting, is just accounting for that, like Jamie said. In mine, when you put it in, like I showed you, Bill, as you're putting those in, that's just a description item when you're going in. And so whatever I pay is uniform. As you see a lot of these, you're gonna see what it is, whether it's utilities, electric, your vendor, your address, and then your invoice number. Then I actually went through the other day just to look, and I went back to the original video where you enter it, and that's exactly how it shows me to put those in that description line item for the payables and purchase order BS&A training.
So it tells you to change the description?
Yeah. Yeah, when you go in, it tells you to always make sure you put in your description line what you're paying
No, it doesn't.
in both of those systems. You can watch the video on there. I went through just
You're charging
make
something
sure.
to the wrong expense account. What is the standard for procedure? Tammy, what is the standard procedure when there's no money in the account and you can't charge it to that line item?
That would require an email to me requesting movement of funds from a different line.
Okay. And I know you were gone during this time frame, but your assistant was here, right? Correct, Melinda?
Yes, well, I think that was done on the 4th, that check run.
Right.
So I don't know when, but probably, yes.
Yeah.
I think Melinda was on vacation, and I was on vacation at the same time.
Any other comments, questions, suggestions? I would like, I did a good bit of research over the weekend, because as Ms. McGuire mentioned, I sat down with Ms. McGuire and Josh and Ms. Klein to try and go over this, and my hope is, going forward, we can get this worked out so these kinds of problems don't happen. I provided everybody with this. This is information that I got from MTA. It has to do with the state Treasurer's Office Accounting Procedures Manual. And what it says here on the first page is the Accounting Procedures Manual requires that Township has financial internal controls. 2 separate offices, clerk and treasurer, involved in township financial transactions provides a level of internal control. Next is the local unit's legislative body must be provided periodic financial reports from the treasurer and the clerk, required detailed financial reports, investment reports, balance sheet, cash activity by fund. The investment report is something that Ms. McGuire takes care of. She does provide those quarterly on how our investments are doing. Next is all cash and investments are under the control of the treasurer. No additional approval required to open accounts or move money. Deposits must be made intact. Cash and checks received correspond to numerically sequenced receipt groups. It has in parentheses, no dime store receipt books. I don't know if we have that or not.
We don't.
Okay, good, that's good. Deposits must be made timely. Bank accounts ending date should be the end of the month. And this is a timely issue for financial reports to the Township Board. Next, detailed financial reports include account number, description, amended budget, current period, year-to-date balance, or budget balance, provided monthly by the clerk. Information comes from the general ledger. Next is investment report, name of the financial institution, type of investment. Like I said, Ms. McGuire provides this quarterly, generally to the board, on how our investments are doing. And I remember last time that percentage, the interest on those is coming up a little bit, so that's good.
Absolutely.
Cash activity, summary of cash activity by fund, bank account, CD, investment account, provide monthly by treasurer. Cash balances of the various bank accounts shall be reconciled to the bank statements monthly. The treasurer keeps track of total cash and investments for each bank account and reconciles to the monthly statements for the bank. The treasurer's doing that now. The treasurer provides a listing of all cash and investments along with a copy of the bank statements to the clerk each month. The clerk then reconciles that and then signs that as well. The cash and investments recorded on general ledger to the bank statements. Township bank accounts, all bank accounts must be in the name of the local government unit and the local unit treasurer. Use of the local unit tax ID number should be strictly controlled by the treasurer. Signing of checks. This is kind of interesting because in some small townships, there's a difference between what banks allow and what the statute calls for. The statute calls for a signature from the clerk and the treasurer or their deputies. Procedure for the clerk. Clerk receives the bill. Clerk prepares the accounts payable list. The Township Board approves the account payable. The clerk prepares the warrant or voucher. The clerk signs the warrant voucher, attaches to the original invoice, and gives to the treasurer. Procedure for the treasurer. The treasurer compares the warrant to the invoice, checking for accuracy. The treasurer makes certain there is enough money in the account to cover the checks. The treasurer signs the warrant, which now makes it a check and negotiable. The treasurer mails the payment to the vendor. The check should never go back to the originator, which is the clerk. This is something we've already covered on the tax account. It's, dual signatures are not required for the tax account. Like we have here, they can be signed only by the simply by the treasurer's office. Best practice, there's a second signature. We have that.
And we do that.
We have two signatures from either the treasurer's office or one the treasurer or the superintendent. Internal control. Treasurer provides the amount of the total tax levied to the clerk. The treasurer reports deposits and distribution amounts, copies of checks, to the clerk, which clerk records in the township's accounting system. The treasurer reports to the clerk the amount of tax return delinquent. And then it's just a list of the various duties. The clerk, responsibilities is general ledger for all funds, disbursements, journal for all funds, reconciles accounts with the treasurer, records tax receipts and disbursements, prepares and signs the warrants for payment to bill. Treasurer, receipts, township revenue, collects property taxes, reports tax collection and disbursements to the clerk, maintains township bank accounts, invests surplus township funds, reconciles accounts with the clerk, signs the warrants, and sends out the payment. I think reading through these, you see that there has to be an interaction between the treasurer and the clerk on a regular basis. In order for our system, for this internal controls, which is required by the State Accounting Procedures Manual, these are our internal controls, is working between the treasurer and the clerk. I'm hoping moving forward, we can follow these guidelines a little closer on both fronts and make sure that these things don't come up again. I think one of the major things here was for the treasurer is when she receives the warrants from the clerk, which the township is approved to pay, The treasurer compares the warrant to the invoice, checking for accuracy, and then making sure there's money in that account to pay that bill.
That's what the finance committee's for.
Well, according to this, that's the treasurer's responsibility.
Right,
Is to
well, if
review
you-
those before you send the checks out.
I review them when I approve the POs, but some of the POs don't come through, like Consumers Energy, and there's a few other ones that don't come to me. They come right with the receipt, and they should be added up and be ready to be paid. I can't be going through, well, like Jane has been going through to try to balance everything out. And if you look in the state statute too, it says that the clerk is the one that's supposed to take care of all the details. And I check them with the finance committee, but at the end of the day, the clerk is responsible for the accounts payable to be right. He's signing the warrant saying these bills are okay to pay, and I write the checks,
And then you sign it.
and then I sign it.
And one would assume that if you're signing that check, you have checked the invoices and they're correct.
Well,
before
I
they
check
sign.
them for obvious things, but I'm not gonna fine tooth and comb them, because if that's the case, I might as well be doing that job.
Well, that is your job. It is your job. You're signing off on it. You're saying, I looked
So
at
is
what
this
Mr.
board,
I looked
Jeremy.
at what Mr. Sutton, I'm not saying I'm not fallible here. I'm not.
Okay.
Okay?
Do
But
not
you're
put
sti-
this
but,
on me.
Nobody's
That
putting it on
is-
anybody. We obviously have a problem between these two offices, and we're trying to rectify it, but everybody's glaring at one side or the other, right? I mean, some of us are glaring here, some of us are glaring here. Depends on where everything's at, but there's enough fault here to lie on both sides. And it
You've
would be...
got to be kidding me right
It's
now.
what it sounds like to me. That's what it sounds like to me. When I sign off on something, when I sign...
Let's bring this down a little bit. Go ahead, Mr. Spencer.
Go ahead.
When I sign off on something, that's saying that I reviewed it and it is correct. And I am assigning my signature to it, saying that I reviewed it and it is correct. And you're going to stand here and say that Mr. Sutton messed up, which apparently he did. Nobody's saying that he didn't. But you signed off on it saying that it was correct.
So let me so I'm going to tell you, when I came to the board a month ago now, I said that I have been talking to Josh. I talk to Josh every time I go in there. Josh, this isn't right. Jane showed you to do it. You need to do it by the statement. You need to save all the invoices and pay it by the statement date, right?
Okay.
Okay? Doesn't listen. Talks around in circles, makes up something, and I just leave the room because I don't even know what he's talking about. Every month, go in there. Josh, this isn't right. There's not this there. You're paying this. You got this, whatever. I've gone to Tammy a couple times. I have emails that show that I've said, listen, this is really a problem. We need to do something about it.
Then why did you sign off on it?
What am I going to do? I'm not going to go back and go through. I've given stuff back to him and said, here, this isn't right. You know what, Jeremy? I have my own job to do.
I'm well aware of that.
Okay.
And one of it is to review these things
You know
before you
what?
sign
And I
it.
have. And I've asked for the board to help me with this, and that's why we're here today.
Well, that's okay,
You know
good.
what? And here's another thing. When Josh lies and says, well, the board told me I could do it this way. I have an email that said that he told me and my deputy Jane that the board approved for me to do a Sobel hardware and the Wex bills this way. Because we were questioning all kinds of stuff. And he's like, the board told me that we could do it that way. And Bill Palmer said he wanted it done that way. So I wrote an email to Bill Palmer, and his response to me was, because I said, well, I must have missed that meeting. And Bill's response to me was, I must have missed that meeting as well. I don't know why you would use a date instead of the invoice number. I would think that when entering, you would put a date and the invoice number. But I'm not familiar with the process of entering into the system. But I am pretty sure that was never approved by me or the board to use a date instead of an invoice number. You tell me, any one of you sitting up here, how am I supposed to help Josh when all he does is lie, makes up stories, and I'm supposed to be able to work with him and try to help him figure all this out?
I don't know if it's as broad and all of that. I don't know that all he does is lie. I think it's a grand generality, but I don't know that everything he says is a lie. I've never experienced that. I appreciate that you've experienced a lie, or you've experienced misdirection, or you've experienced the runaround, whatever terms of those may have fit at that particular moment.
Right.
I appreciate that. But what I would say is that, like I have complained to other board members in other meetings, I wish I knew more of this sooner. I feel like the fire alarm has been pulled long after the fire was in process. And part of the problem that I'm having right now in listening to this is now it's gone into emotional, it's gone into people trying to defend themselves, it's gone beyond just the early stages of the fire. And I'm concerned about that. So it's past. We're beyond that, unfortunately. But I really wish that any of us on this board would have brought this sooner, to be honest.
And that's fair, but to be honest, Tim,
Yeah, sure.
I followed the chain of command, which is what I've been in trouble many times for. And when I do try to help people, I get accused of harassing people. So I'm sorry, but I followed the chain of command, and I came to the board when I felt like, oh my gosh, this is really bad.
Okay, I get that. Okay.
Can we agree that moving forward, we'll try and do better? I don't think we're doing anything for the township that's a benefit if we don't correct what we're doing. And this has to be between obviously the clerk and the treasurer and the superintendent.
I'll make a suggestion.
Okay?
We'll take the accounts payable back.
According to the guide, that is supposed to be the duties of the clerk.
You're correct, but we've done it in the past. And it's all about segregation of...
No public outbursts, this is not public comment.
You have segregation of duties, which is what the auditors tell you. In smaller municipalities, you have people that are the clerk and the treasurer that do it all. As long as you have internal controls to take over and to make sure that the checks and balances are there, then you can do that, the same things in the same place. And we've done it in the past, so it's not like it's something new that we have to reinvent the wheel.
I have a question. How many times has the finance committee met in the last 6 months?
When do they normally meet?
One
3 or
time?
4?
One time.
I think we need to start there.
Would that be help?
Who
No,
comprises
that's
the
not going to
finance?
help, because here's a perfect example.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Who comprises the finance committee, to be blunt? Right?
The clerk, the treasurer, and the superintendent.
Got it. And you've only met
And
once
it should be
in
the
6 months.
supervisor too as well.
Okay, so only once in 6 months, is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Is that correct? Sorry,
correct.
Bill, but I just got to understand. So wait a second. So how can the finance committee be responsible for oversight or answering some of the questions that have come up? Is that your point, Jamie? Is that what you were saying earlier? Like, because you mentioned that the finance committee
So
would...
when we went to the PO system, we used to meet every week and sit down and physically have the invoices in front of us and sit in a circle. And Bob was, in the circle too, and we would pull things, we'd go, what's this? Oh, look, taxes is added. Make sure that doesn't get entered. Throw that one to the side. We'd go through, they go, oh, what's this? Oh, that isn't supposed to be charged there. It's supposed to be charged here. It's getting charged to the general fund, and it's supposed to be water and sewer. Set that aside. So, actually, Larry Holland had made some mention of some things and came in and talked to Tammy and Josh and I about going back to that, because right now in the PO system, what happens is department heads enter a bill, Josh enters the bill, like I had mentioned before, that they're entering them on packing slips and then paying it when the invoice comes in. And then they're paying all the invoices and then paying it again when the statement's there. And it's like, when you get that, you're supposed to, there was a way that he was taught by Jane, and I've mentioned things to him throughout the years, to hold on to different things. There was a book. You hold on to the statements, you wait for all your invoices, you make sure you have them all, and then you pay it, those type of things. So with the new system, there's a way that you can enter it, and then when the statement comes in, you pick those, pluck them out of the system, and then you pay it all on one bill. That's not happening. They're all just getting paid. And they're getting entered duplicately because you've got people in the department heads that are entering them, and then Josh enters them, and then it gets paid, and then it gets paid again, and then you have credits, and then you have checks coming back and things like that. So that's kind of that way. So Larry suggested going back through the bills, and we can catch some of them, and we have, and looking at them a little better. Sorry, I'm getting all hoarse already. But a few of them, for just the point's sake, in Finance Committee, it's not going to catch them all, because the problem is with the utility bills, Consumers Energy, for instance, you get a stack like this, there needs to be a tape run with it. When it comes to us to look at it, then say, okay, there's 50 invoices, it adds up to this amount of money. So Josh enters those don't even go to Finance Committee, they just get paid, or try to get paid.
Right.
Well, now we're catching that. Jane caught it and was like, Josh, and this was just a couple weeks ago, there was 54 or something like that, and only 53 had been entered, but then he was coming up with 55, and 3 totals were missing, and it took it a day and a half to figure out what was going on with the Consumers Energy bills.
Okay, so in the end, it simply comes down to things used to work, things aren't working, something's fallen out of the process.
Absolutely.
So trying to recover when were we last doing well is the question that comes to mind.
When Jane was here,
What period?
when, before the clerk's office took over the accounts payable, 2021,
Okay, fine.
fall of 2021.
Okay, so, but the question at that time isn't the people, it's got to be a process, because in the end,
It's a process.
the process is the situation right now. So, I mean, I do realize, don't think for a second, I don't think that people are accountable for the process, but the point is, we're hearing, I don't think either one of you are trying to subvert something to make it all blow up. I don't think that for a second. But processes that help make things go smoothly are clearly the hell out of this. I mean, they're so far beyond that they're not even,
Oh, yeah.
they're history. And so if we're not going to follow the process that used to work, then I can see exactly how we got into this. And I appreciate this conversation,
Yeah.
all of this whole discussion, because it made it clear on my mind, I'll tell you.
It's a lot. Accounts payable is a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, you have to...
All of this is a lot, let's be honest.
You have to break down, you get a WEX bill, and you've got gas. You need to break it out to every department, and it's not just lump it in one thing until it runs out of money.
Yeah. Nope.
So, yeah.
Mr. Palmer, I have a suggestion. You're having office hours twice a week now? I'd suggest that this Finance Committee meets weekly and to try to
Easily.
disseminate some issues going forward, and then let's see how it goes for the next one.
In all due fairness, I appreciate that, but the Finance Committee can't help the process that Josh isn't doing.
Can talk about issues that need to be addressed. That is a point that can happen. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Josh, at this point, do you understand the process that isn't being done right now to be able to do it? I mean, I'm just trying to ask.
Yeah, starting to put it together, it's
Right.
with Jane back, it's a lot easier because,
Okay.
honest to God, you ask her a question and it's just right there. She's got it all
Yeah, she's very
in the
good.
brain, and she does. She catches a lot more as we're going through.
Right.
Explains to me how to stop those, where she would keep them, holding some of those invoices back.
Okay.
Just a lot of those things that have honestly been helping us get it under control and start pulling them in and catching all those ones that are being double entered. And everybody's slowed down across the board. And then with this last one, that's where we were talking, and she goes, you add them up. So I did. I added them all up through Excel. And that's how we found them, because went through the invoices that were entered, balanced them out with what her total was on the check run versus mine on the GL posting report.
So, okay, just a moment, because this is, I'm not only seeing this on the board picture on the screen over here, but I'm also seeing over your shoulder. Jamie, you disagree with what he just said, so would you mind explaining what you're...
No, you know what? I don't want to. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, all right, so then I guess My last question here is, Josh, you understand the situation. Are you able to pick up the process yourself?
That's what I'm trying to work on now.
Okay, okay, I get the try.
Oh, and I talked to Mr. Palmer
There's that
about
little
it.
Yoda thing about no try,
Yeah.
do. It's like, it's like, can you pick this up yourself, or do you need help?
Well, I need help, and that's something we definitely need to get our CPA back, and
I see. Okay, got it. So, okay, well then, there we have it. So that was one of the discussions as well. So, just as a question, so then, is this one of the things, Mr. Barth, you were thinking would assist
As
the
long
clerk in
as
this case?
The clerk would take that assistance because it's his statutory duty,
I get it.
as I was clarified. So yes, that is something that Mr. Miller could help Mr. Sutton.
So my last comment then would be, hearing that there was a process that once worked and is no longer, or has for some time not been followed, it would be, in my mind, a requirement that this new financial consultant do that, implement that again, not create some flavor of it or some variation on it, but exactly what we used to do. Because it sounds like we had it down, it was never documented in a way that somebody else could pick it up. A new person comes in, and it all fell on the floor, and we've been expecting magic ever since then to make it go right. And that is the reason why I have problems with turnover. And elected government officials are no different than employees in that respect. So I would love to see this resolve. And if you need the help, it sounds like you've already got that voted in.
Yep.
Yeah, but
Okay.
there it is. Thank you very much.
We're at our final public comment. Comment on anything, as I mentioned before, the board doesn't answer questions. Do we have anybody over here that would like to make a public comment? Yes.
Get my clock. Slacking over here.
All right, where do I begin? Brenda Godfrey, Oscoda. First off, I'd like to clear up some information I spoke on at the last meeting that cast a negative impression on an officer. Von Heath was a great officer for Oscoda Township who left not because of a frivolous complaint, but because he wanted better than what Oscoda could offer. He found a job that offered him better benefits, better pay, and better for him. We all knew he was going to leave way before that complaint. I have no doubt Von will continue to be a great officer and make his new employer very proud, and I apologize to Von and congratulate him for moving on to bigger and better things. Next, after sitting here watching this whole meeting tonight, I'm bewildered. Steve, weeks ago, you wanted Josh to explain the whole money thing. It's been, 4 or 6 weeks, and we're still waiting. Tim's up here questioning him tonight on it. I have heard nothing come out of the clerk's mouth to explain anything except a yes and a no. When I worked with him, you never hardly ever put in a 40-hour week, Josh. You complained that you were there 50, hardly were you there 40. You were outside smoking, your office was closed. I don't understand. If you need help now, why didn't you ask for help then? Put in the effort. Like Jamie was saying earlier, I believe that's what she was trying to explain. Put in the effort. Work 40 to 50 hours. You might learn your job. If you can't, resign. We're tired of losing money. Explain where the money is. Don't sit up there and just keep saying yes or no, shaking your head. Explain. Steve, you need to be holding him accountable. You asked him to explain this weeks ago, and you're letting it go. Are you going to sweep it under the rug like everything else? This is crazy. You guys are a board. Where's the answers, Josh? Where's our money? Why? How? How do you spend that? We shouldn't be sitting here letting Kelly question this and bring it forth. Steve, you're the one that brought it up weeks ago. It should have been on the agenda and it wasn't. Jamie keeps trying to make a point. People need to start listening to her. She's been there 25 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else over here? Yes.
My name's Kevin Kubik from Oscoda. Mr. Palmer, I heard you say that you guys weren't going to answer questions. I know in the past, the second comment, the board would answer questions. Is that something that's changed now that you were the supervisor?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Never mind, I don't want to waste my time on it. As far as who's responsible for putting what on the agenda? Is that the board or is it the superintendent?
Superintendent.
Okay, so when the superintendent sends me emails saying that she's not responsible, that it's the board, then, I mean, that's also not correct information that I received from her. I mean, how do you get placed on the agenda? Because I've sent emails to the clerk and I've followed the board protocols on how to get placed on the agenda, and my emails didn't get a response back and I never got placed on the agenda, but I can see that Ms. Brown can get placed on the agenda. Do we just pick and choose who we want to be able to speak at the meetings and who gets to say what? Standing here today, I mean, can I get a round of applause for Ms. McGuire? Can I do that? I can guarantee you that if anything was going on with Ms. McGuire like it's going on with Ms. Sutton, you guys would be attacking her nonstop and you wouldn't be making excuses at all whatsoever. Josh, you seem pretty quiet tonight after what happened a couple weeks ago when you were attacking her. How does it feel? When you guys do your road trip and your field trip here to the other townships, and you guys find out how that township works without a superintendent, and you guys are going to hire somebody to fill the spots of the people that aren't capable of doing their jobs, are you guys going to look in to see how that township exists without a superintendent? Because I would be interested in seeing that fact, how that works. If we're going to spend all the extra money, maybe we could find ways to save money. So while you're there, could you find that out? And back on October 10th, this board held a special closed session meeting regarding a lawsuit for the purpose of consulting with our attorney regarding a trial or settlement strategy in the matter of Kevin Kubik versus Oscoda Township. See, I disappeared. Nobody on this board ever reported anything about that happened to me at all whatsoever. The only thing that ever existed was the special closed meeting. So, now the only way to have a closed meeting on a lawsuit for MCL 15.268, parentheses E, subsection 4, is if there is a detrimental financial effect on the litigating or settlement position of the public body. What was detrimental about my lawsuit to this township that nobody wanted to disclose anything about? There must be something. Nobody wants to look at me now? It's amazing how nobody listens when I speak. The following board meeting on the 24th, there was a vote placed, and on that, under number 7, was mediation results and decisions. Now, it doesn't say anything about the lawsuit, but what you guys voted on, without any discussion, any information, was the fact that you guys were agreeing to pay me 6 figures for what the township superintendent had done wrong to me by wrongfully terminating me. And other terms. You guys never disclosed that. Matter of fact, Mr. Spencer, you amended your motion because Mr. Cummins sent you a message because you guys didn't want to disclose the amount of money that you guys paid me. The other thing that I was wondering is how you guys gave Ms. Klein such raving reviews in October and November, December, after you guys just found out in October that she had wrongfully terminated me from the police department. I was awarded my position back, and you guys also agreed to pay me 6 figures because of what occurred. The reason why is because you guys never thought that I would ever come and expose the truth about what happened with me. Stay tuned, Mr. Palmer. It's only going to get better. Congratulations.
Thank you. Anyone else on this side? Anyone in the center? Yes.
Sorry, I'm short. I can't see anybody.
Could you state your name, please?
My name is Brooke Foster Stalker. I live on 6775 Merton Road, and I would like to invite every single one of you on a road trip down my road. It is terrible. I've been personally traveling that road for about 30 years. I've lived on it for about 10. The transportation department at the school has refused to drive down it to pick up my children. The U.S. Postal Service, I have written documentation from them too, are no longer delivering our mail. Probably about 3 years ago, we had a meeting over with some of the board members, Mr. Bolin, who basically just brushed me off, told me that there was nothing he could do. The land on our road, runs down our road, we run through Huron National Forest, was all federal and there was nothing he could do. It's not, it's all state land. And I have heard nothing from anybody since then. The road is terrible. I cannot do more than 5 miles an hour for 2 miles. That's just unnecessary. So if you're looking, it's a dirt road, okay? The bank on the side of the road is at least 3 feet higher than the road itself. There's no ditching. There's nowhere for the water to go. It's a giant mud pit. Not only is it a giant mud pit and impossible to drive down, the vehicle damage, I don't know how often you guys replace your front suspension on your vehicle, but I do mine twice a year. That's thousands.
Wow.
My sister-in-law's tailgate just fell off. It's ridiculous. We need it taken care of and we need it fixed. It's atrocious. I've had enough. I can't even get my kids on the school bus.
Yep.
So I would very much appreciate this to be addressed.
Would you mind mentioning the road again? I missed that.
Merton, M-E-R-T-O-N. And actually, I would like to add to this for a minute. If you're unaware of where Merton Road is, it is off of Bizinet Road. Okay, so just past 7 Mile Hill, where the trailhead is, where the couple curves off to the right. This morning, I am sitting there waiting for the bus, and it's in the middle of a very sharp curve. So this morning, I'm sitting there waiting, and there was a car heading east. This is a new bus stop. Doesn't see the bus, has to lock it up, because the red lights are flashing, because you can't see in the curve. And then heading west towards 65 is another vehicle coming around the other curve. One's headed to the front of the bus, one's heading to the rear of the bus. You cannot see it. And the other vehicle, which happened to be an Oscoda Township police officer, had to slow down real quick. It's dangerous. My kids should be picked up at home. We should have normal services as any other tax-paying citizen, and we can't even get that anymore. Not to mention we have the logging trucks over there tearing it up also. That shouldn't even be on the road, fully loaded. So yes, I would like this addressed. And there are several of Merton Road residents here tonight. If you all want to raise your hand.
Come up.
You got 4 seconds.
So yes, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ryan Bull, and I live on 6893 Merton Road with my 2 80-year-old grandparents. Last week, both of them got stuck at the end of the driveway in their car. Can't even open the door. They got to call me. I got to leave work to come drag their car out of the ditches that these logging trucks are causing on our roads. I got weigh receipts for these trucks leaving 38,000 pounds. Most of them are leaving around that weight, destroying the road. I've lived on that road since I was 4. I also own the house next door, 6875. There's other residents over here, Miss Tammy, if you can raise your hand. All her grandkids, they got to be driven to the end of the road. Mr. Joel Foster, his sister was just speaking. Their kids have to be driven to the end of the road. I mean, where's this, we called the logging company to get resolved. Logging company, we're gonna do it anyways. Destroy our roads. Most of these residents own 15 feet to the other side of the road, their mailbox and all that. Residential area. It shouldn't happen. No one's doing anything about it. And if they don't, we will.
Anyone else in this center section? Yes.
Y'all are going out for a road trip, stop on down to Cedar Lane. We got some nice potholes you can try out your front axles on. I wanted to bring up a couple of things for open comment. The April 1st and 2nd is the kickoff of the Oscoda River Canoe Marathon season, the Klondike Challenge. So anyone that wants to come out, please take a look at that. I also wanted to, and I didn't get to mention this last time, Trustee Cummings, because I think you had exited from a hour-and-a-half meeting before this meeting, and you had to take a break. I wanted to thank you for the follow-up on the website info. The dialogue has been tremendous. You looked at everything I questioned. Both you and Trustee Spencer went through the screenshots I sent, but you sent me a follow-up message after the last meeting of everything that you were trying to do to make our website more robust. And I think it's a great tool to get information out there, and I just really appreciate the time and effort you put into it. It was a really good dialogue, and you really took a lot of time, and I think you guys hear a lot of negative when we come up here, or maybe just things that we think could be done better, and I think you deserve some accolades. So thank you for taking the time and repeatedly following up. I never reached out again, and you just kept coming back with updates, and it meant a lot. So I appreciate that. I did want to bring up something, if you guys are not aware, when you were talking about this finance, about the Furtaw Field. So the Furtaw Field disposable income or property disposition I wanted to talk about. So April of 2021, you guys approved a property disposition. It was approved by the board. And then there seemed to be another one, and Debbie Roush helped me with this one, find it. It was revised in May of 2022, but I can't find it in any board packet. We've all watched meetings, we can't find it. And there is some definite language in there that makes it basically null and void if you put it on the non-disposable. It basically states that, under Section 4, the township may entertain any unsolicited offers to purchase property classified as disposable or non-disposable. So I'm not quite sure what the resolution to put it in non-disposable does for us, other than calling out that maybe this one in May wasn't valid. It wasn't a valid change to the disposable property. I don't know who did it. I don't know if that came out of the EIC. If someone can look into that. I don't know if the superintendent knows if there's any background, like if you keep like a log of revisions. But it looks like it was revised, but it never came before the board for revision. And I think that would be a big one if you're trying to put Furtaw back into the non-disposable tonight. So maybe that could be clarified at the next meeting, just to figure out if it was in fact, and we just couldn't find it anywhere. Maybe it was a special meeting that wasn't recorded that we didn't get to watch. I don't know. Also, about the finance director, do we have this in the budget? And what's this guy going to be paid? How many hours is he getting paid? Like, we always spend a lot of money, but one thing I wanted to bring up that I think would help with the financials, could you add a column at the end when you print these things out that just says year-to-date budget to actual? Because like you put a finance director in and you approved him, but nobody talked about what's he getting paid, how many hours is he gonna work? Like, we're just spending money again and nobody knows. And the last one that I wanted to mention was, there was no list of what his credentials or stuff needed to be, and we talked about other positions didn't require it. And this was in the paper, the township trustee position for the vacancy filled by our new supervisor transferring over from his position. And it's got stuff in there, major functions of each branch of government, local, state, and federal, along with the relationships. Awareness of the roles of other elected appointees. Does anyone know all this?
Sorry, you're out of time.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Sorry for going over.
I'm sorry, the beeper's not working.
She's referring to the ad in the newspaper.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Anyone else in the center?
Requirement of whoever applies for this
How about on the right-hand side?
or no, for the board seat. So they were making the point that we're taking applications for the trustee. We didn't take applications for
You may remember me, my name's Clayton Jolly, and I've been here before. I gotta tell you, I'm not gonna query you about the situation that I saw a little anomaly in, the lack of police protection at that small meeting at the library and 2 police officers here. I don't even know why I have police officers here, but I find it just odd. You got plenty of room to run and hide here, and you got 2 police officers. Over there, you had no place to go and no police officers. It just seems a little anomalous to me. But I'm old, and I guess I just don't understand things. But the one thing I can tell you, all the years of my life and involved in a lot of different military, union, church, Boy Scouts, you name it. I've been on committees. American Legion commander, been on committees. I've never seen a committee, a board, or anything else that had less communication, less leadership, and less teamwork. You're to be congratulated. At 82, I find that you're at the peak of that group. Time for you to shape up and do the job that you were entrusted with by the voters of this community. Be trustworthy. Work as a team. Put your egos behind you, and any idea you have of being the boss or whatever, the big I am, none of you are. You're here to look after us. Do that. Work together. Every one of you has strengths and weaknesses. Utilize the strengths, ignore the weaknesses, and work together. Communicate. Chain of command, that's a bunch of crap as far as I'm concerned. There's no real chain of command with this group of people. There shouldn't be. You had 7 people with 1 person who was designated the leader. There's no chain of command there. There's no flow chart with that. Another thing is, if somebody's going to be getting a job, you have a job description. Ought to have a job description for every one of these jobs, so when somebody new goes in there, they can have an idea of what the job entails. And then you can help train them in that, and he knows where to go or she knows where to go to get that help. Come on, people. Get it together. You're an embarrassment to our community with what we saw on the last couple of these meetings. You need to do better. Oscoda needs better representation and governance than you're giving us right now. That's it, I'm done.
Thank you. Anyone else over here? Yes.
Robert Tasher. First of all, I got to say, if these meetings are going to be this long, you got to get better seating in here. It's killing me. I just wanted to say that a couple weeks ago, I went to a Michigan Association training at Frankenmuth. Jamie was there. It was about boards working together, decisions working together. I thought it was an excellent course. I think it's something that's really needed here, and I would really like us to bring that training here to Oscoda and have all of our board members take that course. because a lot of it had to do with planning boards, but it had to do with boards in general, about working together. And annually, we bring, from the Planning Commission, we usually bring 2 sessions a year from Michigan Association of Planners, professionally come in here and give us the training that we need. And this is a new program that they brought in for making good decisions. That's the name of it, making good decisions together. So I'm going to really try to push that. I am the education trainer for the Planning Commission, so I would really like to bring that training here, and hopefully not just Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, this board. It's a value to all boards to make good decisions together, and that's what we have to do. So thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Leave it. Gentleman over here.
My name's Dave Carmona, live here in Oscoda. Just moved here 4 months ago, so the last 4 months of coming to these meetings and watching them, reading the minutes, has been a real eye-opener for me. Not what I expected here. Let me say that right up front. As far as the financial consultant goes, I urge the board to consider, greatly take time and consideration of the scope of that position. Consultants have a tendency to become like octopuses. They spread everywhere. So please, be sure the scope is focused and what you're doing is what you need. Be sure you're focused on the issues and not the personalities, like I saw tonight. A lot of personality stuff mixed up with the issues. We have issues, focus on the issues, not each other. And then I just have a few questions. I know you don't answer them, but these are for you to consider. And I heard them. My question are, why aren't the line items locked out in your BS&A system so that they can't be changed? You need to look at that and consider that. Have you worked with the vendors to come up with a secure system for locking out these line items, which apparently anybody can go in and change, either deliberately or accidentally? It's irregardless. And if you do get these line items locked out, require verification of somebody else. That's the whole purpose of a clerk and treasurer. It's like double entry accounting. One checks the other's work. So if somebody catches something, says, oh, that's wrong, they need the verification from the other person to make that change on the line item. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, with that, let's have board comment. Mr. Cummings.
Yeah, sure. I've got a couple of items. The first, I wanted to know, are there any unannounced EIC announcements? Josh, anything that we, as a board, need to be aware of?
For right now?
Well, yeah, sure now.
What do you mean, like what we're working on, or?
Well, I mean, all right, so then I guess I'll lead right into it then. So on or about the 9th of March, the EIC approved 6 different applications for a $50,000 grant that this township sponsored. And it's now been 2 board meetings. The first one I can appreciate, they couldn't have added their applications yet because there was a Thursday and the cutoff for the agenda is Wednesday noon. So we're here at another board meeting. I haven't seen the applications yet, and I don't know why we haven't heard anything about it. So I'm trying to figure out what's happening with it. You're the board representative on the EIC. You tell me.
I guess I thought the chair was gonna send that over for you guys, so we would have all of that information, but we did approve those 6 grants.
Yep.
And a 86% portion amount of what was requested for those 6. And currently waiting for those to come to the board for us to see just as the review out of the IC committee.
Yeah, so, right, so we need to get those over here for the next, you haven't got them yet, right?
No, there was an issue with the scoring. No one did any scoring, so it needs to be done over. That's why it has not come to the board. They
Okay.
need to be done over.
So it's my understanding that we proposed a first come, first serve for the first 5 applicants. There's no need for scoring because it's the first 5 applicants. And speak closer to your microphone.
Well,
it's okay.
I'm sorry, from the instructions that were in the grant itself,
There were what?
from the instructions in the grant itself, they needed to be scored. Granted, they were proposed in the order they were received, but the grant funding was up to $10,000. So you could have turned yours in first, but it was going based on the cost, those kind of things, and no one did the scoring. And then there was a discussion about the wrong form being used by the board, by the whole EIC. So there was too many variables to just hand out $10,000 to 6 applicants because there were 6.
Right. Well, that brings me to another point. Fair enough, and thank you, but I don't understand where scoring came in because who is going to establish scoring for these applicants? Because we didn't provide it.
It's right in the directions in the facade grant.
Okay, so so it's stated in there.
So
Okay,
the EIC would have scored it, and then those would have been presented to the board for approval afterwards.
Okay, cool. So the part that concerned me was when I read in the newspaper that Mr. Sutton had proposed that we expand the grant to accommodate 6 applications. But the approval by this board, as I understand, but we approved of 5 applicants, right? And $50,000. Isn't that how that went? I believe
It was just the $50,000 because I know the EIC had changed what if you had people apply in the first round and didn't use those funds and funds being left?
That's...
So there was...
Then you run it again, but the point is,
Yeah.
what... Go ahead. Did you have a comment on that?
No. No, I'm still listening.
Okay, sorry. Well, it was 5 applications, was it not?
There were 6.
Right, but the approval was for 5, was it not?
No, not necessarily. I would have to go back and look, but they had 6. One of the applicants wasn't asking for the full 10,000.
And I'm aware of that point. What I was trying to determine was whether or not we were modifying what we as a township board agreed to support, but we're modifying at the EIC board level, and that's what I'm concerned
And I guess
about.
that's where the scoring comes in. So if the scoring had been done, there might have been one improvement that was more cohesive to what they were actually looking for.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to need to go back and reread some stuff, but I'm raising a concern on that point. So here's my big problem again. I dislike 100% the lack of transparency in this group here. This board and that superintendent. I don't know what the hell is going on, and I haven't heard a word since the 9th of March. I expected that topic to be in this packet, and I don't know why it's not there. You're the representative for this board, but you're also the secretary taking way too much time to write minutes and not paying attention, being the board's representative. I don't get it, but it's not working for me, and I'm just calling it out. So now, I want to see these applicants who submitted their applications, honestly, they did it with the trust, gosh darn it, the trust that this organization called the Township of Oscoda is going to be able to manage this process properly and get them the money that they deserve. And I don't understand why we're not doing it. And I'm seeing a problem here. No, I am not happy. So, fair enough. That's my first topic. My second is I don't understand something I learned today, that the FOIA procedures have changed. I want to know who the frick changed them and why? And was it your approval? Did you approve it?
No, I don't do the FOIA.
I didn't think you did. Did you decide it on your own?
I discussed it with the board when I was getting swamped with FOIA requests, and that's when we brought in the attorney to review some FOIA requests.
When did this happen? I'm sorry, I don't know. When did that
Right
happen?
after I started, when we started getting a lot of these.
How long ago was that? Because I remember this was a topic from some time ago, but I also remembered when you first started as clerk, you didn't follow the procedure that was you charge for the work it takes, where you charge the time if you get a large FOIA request. It is reasonable to charge fees, but for some time you weren't charging any fees to anybody, and then you were getting hit with a lot of requests. Now, I'm not a proponent of trying to stop FOIA requests because, you know, a big FOIA request is perfectly valid, but not using fees to prevent FOIA requests. That's not the intention. But some FOIA requests can be so time-consuming that it can just throttle his office, and I do get that point. That's the point I want to be clear about. What I want to understand is, when did this procedure change occur? What was the procedure change? What was it you think we decided? I don't remember doing it. What was this? You know, and when was it formalized? Because I don't have any recollection of this. Sorry, I just feel...
Go back and look what we did. We brought in Carlito from our firm, and we did training, and he was working with me and the chief because we had two separate kind of policies. So those are now brought into where we have our uniform charging and everything.
What was the time frame on that?
We did that last year.
Last
Yeah,
year?
So I'm thinking we'd have to go back to like January, February of 22 when I was really getting swamped with those coming into the new year.
Okay, but if you're saying it was over a year ago, then my question is, why are people just mentioning this now? Because I know for a fact that Ms. Brown has requested more FOIA requests than just recently. So I'm wondering, how are we sitting here just hearing from her now that she's got a new procedure that she hasn't heard about in, what, the last year? I'm just asking because I don't understand. And I feel like we've got this biggest hey you organization going on here. And, you know, the janitor's running this as far as I know. But I don't get it. So I just want to, can you clarify any of that?
Yep, not all of those go through the attorney.
I didn't think
It's
I had
only
to.
ones that are going to need any kind of special redaction related
Okay.
to HIPAA laws, employee personnel files, and then obviously anything out of the police department that they would need related to their records.
Is any of this documented in a write-up that what we're actually doing? Like, this is what people can expect if they submit a FOIA request? Like, in other words, if I email you one, or I guess I can't, I have to fill out a form. If you give me something in exchange with that says, by the way, this is it, or that information is part of the form?
The
or something?
FOIA policy in and of itself is what the township adopted. So your full FOIA policy and your pages that run through, and then the charging is determined by each municipality.
When did
had
we adopt
issues-
it?
What's that?
When did we adopt that?
Before me. That's just,
But it's not
that's
bef-
what's in our book for FOIA
Right,
policy.
but it's
is
not
just the
before you
state
because it
policy.
changed, and that's the point I'm making. See, that's where I'm going with this. It existed before this changed, and now it's changed, and I don't know anything about it. And yet we're supposed to. We had to have adopted that change. I don't know anything about it. That's the whole point. You changed the FOIA procedure based on something that occurred with some folks that came in a year ago. And I'm going like, okay, we need to formalize that adoption.
Yeah.
So how about we do that? I'd like to certainly know what our FOIA procedure is and what our public has to put up with or not. I'd like to know what it is. I'd also like to make sure that we are all operating on the same rules, right? You know, the rules aren't there just for restriction. It's there to create expectation from what the public can expect from us, or you, or the process of FOIA. Thank you very much. I'm done now, finally. Thank you for your time.
All right, Mr. Spencer, you have a comment?
to the residents with the bad road, there was so I live on Whole Island, for anybody that doesn't know that, and we just had our roads redone, and it was all because of the efforts of one individual that lives on that island. And he marched around every single residence and banged on everybody's door and brought a petition with him so that we could submit that petition to the road commission and the township so that we could split the cost in 3 ways of fixing that road. Now, so the residents have to have a special tax assessment to pay for it, to pay for their third. The township paid for a third, and the road commission paid for a third, if I remember correctly. And I can't remember if that assessment's still on there, or if we paid it off already. But have you guys gone, just a simple yeah or no, have you gone to the road commission and started that process of getting the petition signed by your neighbors?
No, we have not yet, because I was just informed of the process this evening.
Okay.
But yes, we will go that route.
I know it's a hassle. I know it is, but it does work. I can vouch for that, and you will pay for it. I can vouch for that too. But and they will finish it. So the only thing that I would recommend is when you're going through the process, in your specific instance, it might not be as bad as, it'll be a little different from the island that I live on. But they have when they did it, we took the lower cost option as a community because that's what the guy that took care of it did. And in hindsight, we should have had them re-engineer that road because now we've got water at the end of all of our driveways that collects every time it rains and every time the snow melts. And so you wash your vehicle and back right through the puddle on your way in and out of the house. And it happens, and then there's some other drainage issues. But I would recommend that, you guys on that road, you folks get together and get a petition started and make sure that you guys work together on what you're gonna pick with the cost for that. And I don't know if your road, I don't know if your road is part of that or not, but if you need any help from me, I'd be interested to look at that and see if there's anything I can do to help. It probably isn't, but hey, I'll look at it.
You betcha. Jeremy, can I add something there?
Absolutely.
Again, it's a dirt road, correct? Okay, well, I think there's something that we can do. We can ask Ms. Klein to call Bruce Bolin at the county, because as long as it's a registered road with the county's required to maintain that road, which they can bring the grader down.
Well, that's probably what's causing their problem, is that grader blade is just shaking all the way down it.
Yeah, so if the board would be okay if we could ask Ms. Klein to call Bruce Bolin to have him look into that.
We can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
That's
part of the process of maintaining the road.
Yeah. But that's doing exactly that, isn't it? That grader blade is just bouncing all the way down. It's just causing grooves.
Not only that, but when they grade it, it just creates the furrows on the side smaller. And they're really...
Yeah, they're digging deeper into the soil instead of...
The big thing that we're asking for is for basically drainage on the road. There needs to be a ditch down the road. The road was basically bulldozed down the center of it, and nothing was ever done. There is no ditch system on the road.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's all I had. Thanks, everybody, for coming out.
Yeah, Mr. Sutton, you have a comment?
Hope everybody has a happy Easter. We won't see you until the end of April.
Mr. Wishborough.
Well, happy Easter to everybody. Mr. Jolly, I think you mentioned about a job description and qualifications for the position that I want to had hired, at least part-time. It's in the board packet. So we discussed some of the, let's say, roles and assignments, but the educational background and what I'm looking for that position is in the board packet.
Nothing.
I'm just happy that I made it through this first meeting. I have to tell you, I was a little nervous coming over here tonight, and I hope we can all start to work together a little better. I know it doesn't look very good right now, but that's my hope. And we have to do that in order to move the township forward and do the work that needs to be done. So let's work on that. So that's all I have to say. If there's nothing else, I will motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Yeah, what time is it?
9:48.
9:48. Oh, boy, it was a long time.
As soon as you can, I will need that corrected resolution for the application.